Hey, everybody, you can't see me yet, but I assure you I'm here. This is Rob here at Smirking Gun Reviews. Welcome back to the channel. And today we're doing episode 2 of Comics You Love, talking about the best issues of October, the books that we really, really loved. And this month, I am not by myself. I am not a one-man telethon this month. And hopefully for the future, we'll have at least one or two or all of these guys and more people joining as we talk about the comics we love. But this month, we got two really, really great YouTubers here. We've got Gateway into Comics himself, Chase, and we got
How's it going?
Skip and Tosh, both two people I really respect their opinions. They're really positive about comics, and I was really, really lucky that they agreed to be on here. Guys, how you doing?
Hey, man. Great to see you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, feeling good. Always good to be with Smirk, and then of course Chase. Always good to be in the company of such great people. First and foremost, really solid, respectable men, and then second of all, guys that I can geek out with about comics. So I appreciate the invitation. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited. It's not extremely often that I get to spend too much time these days with comic books. And so whenever I have the opportunity or just a couple hours to sit back and talk about it, that's awesome because I'm just workhorse.
Yeah. I'm really excited that we get to do something which is positive and talk about books in a way that doesn't really, always get done. Everybody's got the right to talk about whatever, like it's hard when, some books disappoint you and some don't, and separating the wheat from the chaff and all that. And, you can be bummed out about a run, or you can, or a writer or an artist or somebody leaves the book or whatever, or the industry and how that's always a problem. And it just, with everything that's been going on, it's so hard to not give in completely to those negative feelings all the time. And so it's my goal to bring everybody, to just, when they watch this, they want to read the books that they haven't read that we're talking about, or they want to be part of the conversation. And so I want to do this live next time. So when you watch this, leave in the comments section your comments. Make sure, I want to have everybody be able to chat live next month. So this is kind of more testing the waters to see the interest out there. So if you guys like hearing from these guys and myself talk about comics, send your support in the comments section and let us know that you're ready to go live next month. And we might as well just get right into it because we've got a lot of books to talk about between three people, right? And everybody's, different opinions and everything. I had to whittle my list down really fast. There's a ton of stuff that I did not even put on here. And nobody else has any honorable mentions, really? Do you? Nobody else did, right?
No, I really didn't have any.
Okay. Well, then I'm just going to cover quickly my honorable mentions because they're not bad books. These are just, they couldn't quite make the list for one reason or another. The first one that we have is, and they're all alphabetical because I'm anal like that. First is Amazing Spider-Man number 50. I wanted to put it on the list. I got the Alex Ross variant because Alex Ross. I've been cutting back on variants, but you get Alex Ross there. The only reason this doesn't make the list, mostly because I was kind of disappointed in a lot of the Spencer run, but now it's starting to pick back up again. And without giving anything away, I mean, it is pretty obvious where they were going with it, but it didn't take away from my enjoyment of it. It just didn't quite fit with the rest of these. The next one would be we're in a little bit of a lag now. Here goes my camera again. Sorry, everybody. Technical difficulties. We'll be working on this as soon as I pop back up.
Yeah, I've actually read a few of those, and the most recent ones I've read about 3 of them, and it's actually pretty good. But I didn't like some of the ones that I read months ago. These past 2 have been awesome. Spencer's, yeah.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a problem, I think, in the middle of the run, but it's picking up steam again. The other one, next one is that didn't quite make the list was Batman: The Adventures Continue. Only reason is because I had to make a cut. Otherwise, that book is continuing to be a surprise. Dini is killing it with these continuation of the animated series. You can hear Kevin Conroy, you can hear Mark Hamill. I mean, I think we kind of do anyway with a lot of the books that we read when it comes to Batman. At least I do. And that book was nailing it. Another honorable mention is Batman 3 Jokers. This would have made the list, but I feel like it fell a little short of the first 2 issues. Just because the end was a little bit like, it wasn't bad. It's kind of like, oh, is that it? I think if we would have had like maybe 1 or 2 more issues to flesh this out a little bit more, then I think we really would have been talking like greatness. The next one would be Dune, House of Atreides, #1. I'm not familiar with Dune. And so I was really trying to jump in and know a little bit about the world before the movie was going to come out, and now the movie's not coming out till next year. So
yeah, I read those books, but I was over at my buddy's house, and he, we kind of try to coordinate, and he buys half of the books that I don't buy, and sometimes we'll get a lot of different ones that are the same. But I was trying to read it. I don't know, man. It didn't catch my interest like some of the other books, but I was in a weird mood. It's a girl issues, so that happens.
No, that's all right. The next one that almost made the list was Hellions, #5. This book is a blast. The only reason I think it didn't make the list is because it's X of Swords. And I'm not going to get into there's the Phoenix, Alex Ross, because again, I had to.
I liked it. It was comedy. It was funny.
The Suicide Squad of Marvel right now. Yeah. It's characters that I just never would have thought that anybody would use in anything, like Orphan Maker and Nanny and Wild Child, and it's a nuts book. And when you got Madeline Pryor and everything all of a sudden showing up. Like those are curveballs, and Mr. Sinister. It's Mr. Sinister's like group, and I love
it. Was fun. And so when I was talking about that, it's pretty rare that you can make me laugh in a comic book. Comedy is like the hardest thing to do, in my opinion, and so I laughed like 4 times, and that's pretty rare for a comedy to hit me like that.
Next is Immortal Hulk, #38. It doesn't make the list because there were 2 issues this month, and one of them had to be cut. So I went with this one instead of the other one. Maestro, #3. This should have made the list because it's Peter David. It's a little bit of Dale Keown in here. This is a story that I just really, really love. I'm a huge Hulk fan. I love Future Imperfect, and I love this version of Professor Hulk turning into this, slowly into this monster, and how he fights Hercules in this issue. This finds Rick Jones. It's a lot of fun. It just didn't quite make the list because I had to make some cuts. Next would be, there it goes again. Well, I'll still be talking anyway. The next one that would have made an honorable mention is Marvel's Zombies Resurrection, because this book should be a throwaway book, and I really like it because it's really about Peter Parker and him trying to keep the Fantastic Kids alive despite what they want to do. You've also got, he's teamed up with Blade and a repurposed Sentinel. It's a lot of fun and serious at the same time, and really somber, and dealing a lot with this poor Peter Parker, man, just can't catch a break in any multiverse.
Yeah.
And then there's we only find them when they're dead. Al Ewing, #2. The only reason this doesn't make the list is because it doesn't give me enough story yet. I need a bigger picture. I need things more fleshed out in that book before I can put it on a list. But so far, so good. I like the premise.
I like #1 a lot. I hadn't checked out 2, but it was a good beginning. Yeah, heck yeah.
It's just a little slow moving right now, and it's over like I pick it up, I open it up, it's gone in a second when I'm in, and that's just kind of crazy. But Wind, number 5 by James.
Oh yeah. It was good. It was good. Yeah. I'm still picking up all of that. I read everything Tynan's doing right now.
Yeah,
he's good.
This is pretty good. This is the end of book 1. This should have made the list, but again, the only reason it didn't is I had to make some cuts. I'm really digging this book because it's so the animation or the art is so colorful and cartoony with this really dark story.
Yeah, it is
heavy stuff, and it's just kind of weird. It's like when you watch Happy Tree Friends for the first time, you see these like cute little animals, and then all of a sudden everything goes bad. That's what I feel like when I'm reading it a little bit. And then the other two, the only reason I'm mentioning them is because I'm a completionist and I don't have all the issues and I haven't read them all. And that would be Philadelphia and Redneck. Both books that I love what I've read so far, but I haven't been able to, I won't allow myself to read over issues that I haven't read. And so I'm waiting to get the full series before I read it. But I think those would all make my honorable mentions list. And I've already talked for 11 minutes. Just about
legit.
So, but that was brief. I think that was a little brief. I was trying to get through it, and Skip's his head.
Hey, that was a lot of comics. That was a lot of comics in a short period of time. That was good.
Yeah, I better take a little.
Redneck. I read the first trade, and it was interesting. I fell off of it after that, but I'd be surprised after you kind of complete it to see how you feel about it. That it's an interesting premise, especially I like the family dynamic within it.
Yeah, Family of Vampires. It's a nutty book. I've read like the first 8 or 9 issues, but then it was hard for me to get some of them that were a little harder to track down without paying through the nose for certain issues. And it's just like, you only have so much money, you only have so much time, that kind of thing. So with the honorable mentions out of the way, it is time to start officially talking about the books that we love that made the list for best of October. And the first one was from Chase, and that was Batman issue 101. We've also got, I I did get the variant for this one. I'm starting to sound like I just buy variants, and I'm saying I don't. I bought this one because it's got Grifter, okay? I bought this one because it's got Grifter on the cover. I remember Wildcats, okay? I remember Wildcats.
You know what I love so much? It's not just like Tynan's writing, but it feels like, and specifically this issue, I really feel like what he's doing is he's helping kind of bring a lot of the open-ended emotional kind of things that were happening from Tom King's run, and he's kind of helping him close that out a little bit. You know what I mean? I feel like a little bit more completion has happened, which is really cool when a writer can do that to just kind of build off of what the other person's done. And I feel like he's doing that with not just Alfred, but with Robin, with Commissioner Gordon. In the very first page or very first splash page of the book, Batman says, and that's how it would happen. Time and time again, I knew that every step of the way I could rely on that system, that structure. And he's talking about, having Gordon there. And he says, but there's no Gordon at the Bat Signal. There's no Robin at my side. There's no Alfred in the cave. And then it wraps up the whole Bat Cat thing. Literally. I mean, they kind of part ways and they kiss and they say goodbye. They're like, we're going to meet in a year from now. And that didn't happen before. So I dig it. That's a good writer. That's all I have to say about that. They can kind of wrap something up like that,
Yeah, this book, I mean,
but the art's amazing. I mean,
the art in there is really, really good. The moment that him and Grifter fight is really, really well done.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
It's of course another fight that ends in a draw or what have you. But it's Grifter mostly just trying to posture a little bit and prove to Batman, like, hey, I could take you if I wanted to, that kind of thing. Everybody likes to step up to Batman. But there's a lot going on in this book. You're right, and him just going over everything that's kind of happened and dealing with the threats that are coming, and dealing with, having Lucius telling him, like, you're not in charge anymore. You're going to have to start dealing with things, on a smaller budget. And it's a really interesting premise. And I know that there are lots of changes coming to DC right now. And it's not an easy task for somebody to, whether people wanted Tom King to run to stop or not, the next person was going to have a heck of a time either way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it was such a unique perspective on Batman.
Yeah.
Having anyone follow that, it's tough. I think Tynan's doing the best job that I've seen anyone for maybe about 3 writers before that. Pretty cool. I like
it's kind of a, they say certain things are like thankless jobs. And I mean, I feel like he's really doing the best he can with what he's got and all the other projects that he works on. I'm really digging it. I dig it a lot more as it goes on.
Skip, he's one of the hardest workers in comics. Sorry, I thought we were just he was asking you, Skip, if you're reading Batman.
No. I'm not reading Batman right now. No Batman, no Detective Comics. There's actually only one Cape type comic that I'm currently reading.
Okay. What is it? I always want to make sure everybody gets their chance to talk about whatever. So that's Batman 101. That's the first one of the month. It's another one that almost made the honorable mentions. The next book that that we loved this month is my first one, and that's Batman White Knight, Harley Quinn, #1, written by Katana Collins and drawn by Sean Murphy. And this makes the list for me because I'm a huge Sean Murphy fan. I'm a huge White Knight fan. I'm a huge fan of the Curse of the White Knight. I know not everybody liked how that wrapped up. I dug it the whole way through. I'm really enjoying a lot of DC's Black Label stuff more than anything, things that are out of continuity, things where you can just have fun with the characters. And I love the universe that Murphy created with these books and these characters, like Victor, the Von Fries book. I really, really liked. And this is like I think a 6-issue limited series. And I liked the direction that they took Harley Quinn in, and how in this series, they're trying to get her, like, Bruce Wayne's in jail, Joker's dead, and he's trying to convince her to help the GCPD in its current state figure out somebody who's doing Joker copycat killings. And it's fun, it's funny, it's serious at the same time. It's a different version of Harley. I like this more restrained Harley. She's got kids, and she's still got that edge to her, but she's trying really, really hard to play it straight, and not in the way that you could have her play it straight now, right? In the book, she's kind of like this anti-hero, like in Joker War, she was on the side of right and everything. But this, it's more like, like a Christopher Nolan-esque grounded Harley Quinn. And I'm digging that a lot. And it may not be it may not be Sean Murphy writing it, but the spirit's there, and the art's there, and the hyenas are there. And I love her interaction with Bruce in jail, where it's just like, you feel like he could just walk out of there if he wanted to, but he's playing it the way that he needs to play it right now. And I don't know about anybody else, but if you haven't picked up this book and you're just like, I don't read Harley Quinn books, this is not just a Harley Quinn book. This is a continuation of that universe. And I'm digging it because it says, the Joker is dead, Batman is behind bars. In a new age of villains, only Harley can save Gotham. And while that might sound like duh or something like a stupid premise to some people, once you crack it open, it surprised me because I just kind of picked it up on the lark. Even
Murphy verse is great.
Sean Murphy, I didn't know that I would actually like it, but I wanted to give it a chance, and I gave it a chance, and somehow it ended up being a real pleasure to read, and I can't wait to continue to read it.
Legit.
Okay, the next book on the list of books we love this month is Department of Truth #2, another Tinian book.
And so I wanted to ask you, what was your immediate perception of this after you read this? Because a lot of different people would have different thoughts about it. I'd love to hear your take, and then I want to tell you why I loved it so much, because I have a few things to say about it that are really unique and different.
Well, I like it. It's one of the things about this book. The first thing is that when we were talking off, when we weren't recording, I was talking about how I'm all about the story. When I was a kid, I was all about the art. Story came second. Now I'm about the story. Art comes second. Mm-hmm. And that if you get good art, as long as the good writing, if the writing is good, I don't really care about the art. But in this case, for me, the art is really distracting.
It is.
It is. And it kind of makes it very hard for me to read. And I think maybe that's on purpose. To make me really have to I had to reread this issue 3 times. Not because I didn't like it, but because I just really wanted to make sure I understood what was happening. Because it's a book where the main characters don't really know what's happening, if anything is real or true, you know. And I'm still got questions. I've got tons of questions, I guess, about what this is and why. That's another one, is why. Why is this? But to me, it's it's a cross between the shadow government and the X-Files meets a grounded Men in Black with that, more that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And when you throw in that Lee Harvey Oswald in
that
here,
was a trip at the very end of the first issue. That was legit.
That really floored me. And again, this is another book that was almost going to make the honorable mention list. But again, we only find them when they're dead. I need more. So I need a little bit more before I can really add it to the list.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's a couple things about this book that just kind of, the very first thing is the immediate premise. There's this old idea from ancient Tibetan kind of mythology, so to speak, right? And they talk about how every individual's consciousness lends credence to this one mass dream that's all happening together. And so we all shape it. And so whatever people as a majority tend to believe becomes real in reality, almost as though life is a dream almost. So the premise of this book is so cool because it's this group of men in the government who are doing their best to shape people's reality away from these things that are crazy, like flat earth and, all these conspiracy theories. And so, I have this friend and he's an interesting fellow. I met him when I lived in the Pacific Northwest, and he is this, and this is going to sound crazy probably to y'all. He is a high up individual, the second most powerful position that you could have in the Church of Satan, which is very strange. I was raised Baptist, and I've always been a man of faith, and getting to know him, finding out that these people in this organization, they're actually all atheists. And so this book kind of blew me away because they're talking about the same things that he kind of told me about. They're saying that, the satanic panic was this thing that happened in the 80s where they were trying to blame all of these crazy things on Satanists, and none of it was actually happening. So that was the conspiracy theory from this issue. And when I read that, I was like, I know somebody who talked to me about that before. So pretty cool. I mean, just the whole thing kind of blew me away, but I've always loved the X-Files. So this was really high on my list because I really like Tynan, very interesting. The art definitely threw me off because it's so out there. If you like weird indie books and X-Files, this is definitely a book for you.
Yeah, the whole thing about changing people's realities what people believe in can become real.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really, really interesting like way to tell this story, a part of this story, because it makes you wonder, like, are things only real because people make them real?
That's right.
And the whole satanic panic thing. Yeah, I mean, that takes me back to X-Files season 2,
Yes.
where the town, the PTA,
Mm-hmm.
was calling up, like, they were like a Satanist.
Mm.
And there was all these, like, people freaking out because in the town, because of what people thought was going on in the world, that Satan worshipers are coming to your town and screwing up your kids and doing all these awful things to them. And then what if it was true, and like what if they got in over their heads? And that's when they started talking about that, that's where I was like, oh yeah. I really started getting into it. And again, with the lady with the eyes and this whatever's eating babies, there's Tinian's been really good with the conspiracy and horror and secret groups lately.
Yeah, there was some crazy imagery in there that really threw me off.
To see him like doing Batman, and then doing these books like Something is Killing the Children, Department of Truth, and then when on the other opposite end of that spectrum, dealing with magic and but like dealing with it like race and sexual orientations and things like that in a really cartoony way. It's the guy is really, really good. And
he's got a lot of different styles. Yeah,
is going to make the list pretty soon. But next up, we've got Skip's first book on the list. That's Firepower. Firepower, number 4. Yep, this one almost made the bottom. If this had made my list, this would be one we'd be talking about later on, because I really dig Robert Kirkman's and Chris Samney's book. But I will leave it to you, Skip, to talk about Firepower, number 4, or however you feel about it, because this is the first time you're talking about it here, so you might as well talk about it however you want to talk about it.
Indeed, like Firepower was one of those books that when I first heard about it, I was like, oh, okay, this is really interesting, as someone who grew up like practicing martial arts, various martial arts, and then also just loving kung fu movies, late 80s, early 90s, cheesy action, kung fu movies, karate movies, martial arts movies, all that stuff, best of the best, and all those things. So when I saw that, and then some of the other influences it had, like sneaker culture, a lot of basketball references, and then just other like pop culture references and stuff, it got me really excited. This particular issue, actually flipped through it and kind of sparked my memory, because number 5 came out, so that's the one that I've read more recently. But number 4, yeah, it was really cool, just where they picked up from the story. Robert Kirkman just making things very, very human. The relationship between Owen, the lead character, and his wife Kelly, her being a law enforcement officer, him being this incredible martial artist with the rare the ability everybody's looking for to be able to throw the fireball, his firepower. It's just really cool, the family together and everything, how they're on the run, and it just seems like more and more the ninja forces, the Scorched Earth clan, or actually in this case it's the Flaming Fists, that they're after them, trying to kind of pull Owen back to that old world, because they say that they need him for this new development that's happened, in the history of their temple, the Flaming Fist Temple. And Owen's out of it. He's like, look, I got a family now. You know what I mean? Like, that was everything that I was searching for to get to the point where I came into the Temple of the Flaming Fist. And then me leaving was me learning enough, not everything, but enough, and then finally getting a family. So it's just great. The Chris Samney and his visual storytelling. I really love that Robert Kirkman and Samney have that relationship where it's not just all about packing it with words. Kirkman steps back and let Samney be a visual storyteller, and they all read so smooth. I'm just always so excited about this book. What are some of the things that stuck out to you, Smirk?
Man, like I remember when I was at the comic book store, and it was for I think it was for free comic book day or something like that. Maybe he had Firepower, the prologue, right? Yeah. And you could get number 1 for free if you purchased the prologue. And I'm like, at the time, I'm like, it's Kirkman. I'm gonna give it a shot. And yeah, I love this book. The things that stick out, like you said, is the humanity. These people feel, aside from some of the dialogue, these people I really feel like are real people. Just having to deal with this situation that he went and did like I compared it to Iron Fist, going to Kunlun but like, unlike Danny Rand, he went there to just find information about his parents. He didn't really want, like Bruce Wayne went to where he went to get revenge and learn to be, and become vengeance and stuff. And this guy, he just went to find answers, and along the way, he becomes this guy that he had to become to get what he needed, and all these adventures. And now he's back in this regular world, and I loved that now he's just, I'm just a guy. Yeah, I can turn the air into fire, and everybody wants this power now. But it's the moment in here that I really like, because they're dealing with the conversation about the girl he loved and lost, and they're just having this normal dinner, like date night. It's, that there's this danger behind the scenes. That they're, you've got the father-in-law giving advice, you've got them training the kids in self-defense, and behind all that, there's this marriage going on, and they've got some stuff to deal with. And it's done in such a great way. It's like, I love like what she's writing here, like, about, I'm sorry, I know it's not fair. You can't control who you think about, but it's like, when that the person that you love, that loves you, still has that thing for someone who's dead, and you feel like you can't fill that void when you really can't. You can't replace somebody like that. You just got to hope that you are enough for that person. And it's such I've never had to experience it. I hope I never have to experience that kind of like emotion with somebody, but it happens to a lot of us. I mean, somebody who gets over another ex, and who wants to be the rebound, and this rebounds, I got, you got a wife, I got kids with this rebound, and she's knowing his past and everything else. On top of that, it's got to make it really hard for her. And then right as you're getting this kind of resolution, then the action hits, and it comes out of nowhere because you get comfortable just reading these two people talking.
And then what?
It gives you that more reason to care about what happens to these people. And the art by Samney, I talked about how, because he drew the Rocketeer, and I was like, yes, I can so see why his art style would fit the Rocketeer. And I love it because it has that not old, but like that golden, or was it the golden era of comic books, like just stories from the 40s and the 30s that look to this book. Even though it's in modern times, I feel like I'm reading something from a long time ago. This story could take place in that kind of era, like the 50s, the guy who went away in the 40s, did what he had to do, and now in the 50s. But no, it's modern times, but it's timeless. And you get these covers that are like, that go, whoa, what is happening in here? And then you open it up, and it's like The Walking Dead. You get all this great character stuff, and then everything goes crazy. And it's one of the things that Kirkman's always been so good at, is making you care about the characters so that when things go sideways, the tension is increased tenfold. And if you're not reading Firepower, I can't tell you why. I can't say enough good things about it. You need to pick it up. Get the prologue. It's everywhere at every comic book shop. That prologue will get you hooked by the end of it, by the end of that prologue, I was like, if I hadn't already been reading it, I'd have picked up every issue that I could get my hands on. So, yeah, back to you if you have any more about that.
I know Chase had something that he wanted to share.
Oh, I was actually going to, so I've got to get these new issues because of what y'all are talking about. Because I've actually put someone through that. Hearing what y'all were saying about that relationship, I've actually broken up with a girl because she wasn't respectful enough about my dead exes and I's past relationship. And that's, wow. I've got to read. So I've read 1, I've read 2. I didn't read the prologue, but I need to pick up 3 and 4 and 5. I just decided by y'all's conversation. So heck, y'all are getting me to read more books than I walked in with. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and I would add this. Like I would say, like the prologue is very necessary to some of the things that come back, because like even stuff from issue number 1 was immediately stuff that came back from the prologue. So I would even say it'd be well worth your time and money to go back, just knock that out, and it's a super fast and easy read too. And then come back. Yeah,
that's what I've been told. My buddy,
and that's what's so great.
Yeah, he told me that I was really making a mistake for not getting the prologue first, and I agree after what he told me about it.
Definitely.
And that's what's so great about this is that, that's one of the points of it, is that sharing that love for these books and then being able to get everybody to see things that maybe they didn't quite see. Because I know, it's easy to just fall into just Marvel or just DC or both, following both. When I first got back into comics, I stayed away from the independents except for Walking Dead, because I've been always reading Walking Dead. I had all the omnibuses. I'm sitting here like inches away from here's the omnibus number 4 just sitting here, so when things started to get a little weird for me in the comic book, world, I started going into independents, and books like Firepower, they're slowly but surely taking over my interest over the big 2.
Yeah, me too, man.
I'm pitching everything out, but
yeah,
I'm loving it.
I'm with you on that.
The next book that we have, I wasn't able to pick up a copy of it, and that's Skip's next book, which is Hedra. And I'm I know nothing. So I will give it all up to you here and let us know what about Hedra. Like, I'm very curious.
Absolutely. Continuing some of the things that we were talking about from Firepower, Robert Kirkman stepping back a little bit and letting Chris Samney, masterfully tell more of the story with just his art, the sequential art. It's such an important thing. And one of my favorite comics, my favorite issue from my favorite series in comics ever, which is East of West, was issue number 22. And there's no words until the very last page. And so when I had seen Hedra and I just looked at it and, and I know graphic design, graphic design is not new to comic books. Obviously that's how a lot of the headers and different things for the books would, get made. It's just that the tools were more analog. These days they're more digital, but I looked at it and I said, that's pretty interesting. I'm going to, I just kind of took a mental note. I went into my comic book store, and I'm always asking for indies because I buy mostly indies these days, and they had it in there. And I picked it up and I was like, I'm not sure if I'm going to read it for like $6. I don't know. And I looked at it, and then the first page, it was this. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is a theme. And then all the way through, as you get throughout it, it tells the whole story inside of these squares. And it starts from a very simple thing to it getting more complex. And all I can tell you is no words at all. Jesse Lonergan, who did the art and obviously did the story, it was easily one of the most fun and even kind of challenging stories that I've read recently in comics. And with the prestige format, it being nice and wide and just giving extra space for the storyteller to really tell those stories, it was tons of fun. It was not what I expected at all. And I love how it was a progression. Like, you kind of saw on the first 2 pages that I showed you, it was still like, okay, yeah, it's just a bunch of squares really just showing a bigger picture. But he starts to break the squares down, and he even like starts going from right to left, and he even kind of goes circular sometimes within the square, which, yeah, how do you do that? But it was just so perfect how he set up all these things and told the story of basically like a planet that kind of knew they needed to go beyond themselves in order to sustain. A random drawing. It was a lottery. Someone gets picked. It's a lady. She becomes the astronaut that they ship out. And as she's out in space, kind of taking this lonely mission all by herself, she sees someone start to kind of circle her spaceship. And on the above their head, they have a hexagon. And then from there, the story begins. And it's like this cat and mouse thing that goes on as they go to different places. And where you come out at the end of the story is so interesting. But it basically starts out as if, you know, things are kind of getting hopeless on our planet, and a lot of death and destruction is kind of being reaped upon us. And we need a new hope. We need a new place to go to see if we can sustain there. And that whole journey, I'm not going to give it all away because I want people to go and check this out and read it, because you will be so surprised how someone took something, they put them, you know, Jesse Lonergan they put themselves in a box, and within that box, all they had to get themselves out of it was creativity. And they definitely, and they tore that box apart. So it is easily a very interesting book. And I think a lot of people would be surprised by it once they pick it up.
Excellent. Because I couldn't even find it on the online store where I go for my local comic shop. I went into the bookstore. They didn't have it. The guy had never heard of it. And yeah, I'm going to have to, wherever I can get it, I'm going to have to do some deep digging to pick this one up, because I love that the way you're describing how they're telling the story. That's amazing. And
yeah, that looks really
cool. Challenging instead of just the same old, same old.
Yeah, and that's my biggest thing. Like, we have no shortage of you know, the good old fashioned like storytelling, which I think is still important, and I love that we all can get that type of entertainment and whatnot from kind of the conventionals. But I'm very much that person that once I get a firm grip on what's convention, I love to just see people like flip something on its head. You know, because then that's like a whole new perspective we have on, you know, storytelling in that way. So books like this, oh man, they really get my gears going, and I really get excited. So I'm glad you allowed me to share Hedra with everyone.
Oh heck yeah, because I want to know more about all these books that I might not never know about. I go to the comic book shop like once or twice a week, and I still just pass some books by without giving them a second glance.
Right.
Sometimes by the title, if I recognize something I know I won't like, but a lot of it's just, you're looking for something to catch your attention. And a lot of times the best stuff like just passes you by until you really make yourself stop. And I guess in COVID land, I don't want to just be touching all the books.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's good to have somebody tell you, no, you can pick this one up.
Definitely.
Chase, you got anything to add about that one?
That just looks legit. That's it. Yeah, pretty cool.
Okay. The next book we have is one that was on the honorable mention because there was 2 issues this month, but one of them made it, and that's Immortal Hulk number 39 by Al Ewing and Bennett and Jose and Brabo and Mounts. This is the Bennett variant cover that I had to get because I'm an idiot. It was because it was Bennett, and I just, again, I said I don't pick up variants, and I've already shown like 4 or 5.
We've all got the comic book addiction, man.
Yeah.
Yep.
But the thing about Immortal Hulk is I know that a lot of people really liked the beginning. They really dug the body horror and the Cronenberg-esque vibes they were getting from it. All the different ways that they were exploring Banner's personality and the different Hulks. You got Devil Hulk and the unique look of Joe Fixit in here. He's not no gray Hulk in this. He's just a guy with a Hawaiian shirt on. But then in the middle, I think it some people just kind of, when it got to the Roxxon stuff and the corporation stuff, they kind of tuned out a little bit. I've been on board since the beginning. I loved the idea of this. Like I said, I'm a huge Hulk fan, so I'm kind of built in to give it a chance anyway. Plus, these Alex Ross covers just are amazing. And this story, though, as you know, I think it's ending in issue 50, Ewing's run of this, and it'll become something else. But we get back to a lot of the crazy horror that started it all, and we've introduced the leader is back. You've got things happening in the below place, people trying to get in league with the one below all. You've got I mean, look at this.
Oh yeah.
Like, what am I looking like? That is insane. And it's not even really happening. It's all happening in Banner's mind. But it
cool.
Looks so real. And how the leader is manipulating everything to get what he wants, because he knows that the one below all wants to be the last thing in existence in all the multiverse. And he basically is like, well, I want a piece of that. And so he manipulates Brian Banner, Bruce's dad, who is in hell, to let him take charge, and how he's been kind of working body swapping with different people like Rick Jones. And now all the Hulks having this internal conflict with themselves. And when you introduce Brian Banner, who has been kind of slowly sprinkled out through this storyline, and showing the importance of that character to Bruce still, this awful, awful man who just abused his son to no end, and his wife, caused the death of her. And in the end, Bruce is still looking for a father, and how the leader is manipulating that to get what he wants. And it's just, the way it's being told is so, to me, brilliant, because again, like I said, it's all horrifying to look at, but it's all just happening internally. And again, that's why I love the Hulk, because it's so, it's such a psychological book, even if people just go Hulk smash.
Right.
And it's never been just Hulk smash. It's
not this one.
This fight about, this man trying to control the different sides of his personality. And, it's not a new thing, multiple personalities. You've got characters like Moon Knight and stuff like that have dealt with this kind of thing too. But Hulk is always special, and Ewing's interpretation of the material and the way he's been going this whole time, I'm really going to miss it when it's gone. As much as I miss Peter David being on the Hulk. And it, not all the iterations of the Hulk have been, to me, this special. And it's at least something that, like, when you do read it, you can at least say that there's nothing like it in Marvel Comics right now. Like, it is a standout book. It is something that's going to always give you something that you probably haven't seen in this way.
Yeah, it is really different. Absolutely. I only read the first trade so far, because I'm picking it up slowly. But dude, just that very first trade, I was like, wow, okay, I'm gonna have to finish this eventually. It's one that I'm behind on, but it was really good. I haven't picked up too many other issues. Like, my buddy picks up most of them, but I've only read a couple of the more recent ones. I skipped around. I know it's bad to do that, but I just did it.
No, I mean, you read it how you read it. He's been throwing all sorts of little things from the history of Hulk out, and just doing it not in a subversion of expectation way, but just different interpretation. Like, it doesn't, have to be just this. It doesn't have to be just that. With inside Banner's head, anything can really be anything. And I love that complication of, like, who who is Banner ultimately without the Hulk, and just the different fractures of this guy. Like the stupid Hulk is really kind of the heart of Banner, and they do that really well in this book of showing him as kind of almost the child version of Bruce, and how he doesn't really he's like a kid. He doesn't really understand what's happening, and I love that. I really really love that as a fan of psychological stories. So anyway, that's Immortal Hulk number 39. The next book, it was a surprise for me to have on my list, and that's Juggernaut number 2 by Fabian. I hate Nicieza. I know he wrote Cable and Deadpool.
I can't pronounce it.
And Milla. And the reason this is on here is because I was so surprised by this issue, because in issue number 1 was pretty good, but immediately they set up, oh yeah, we want you to go after the Hulk, and I'm like, oh, of course you are. If you're doing a limited series about the Juggernaut, you need to run into all his greatest hits, right? Literally and figuratively. And so I was prepared to just be like, man, he can't even go toe to toe right now with the Immortal Hulk. And the continuity wise, what is that? How does this even make sense? Blah blah blah. But this book surprised the heck out of me, because I was like, how is the Immortal Hulk gonna deal with the Juggernaut coming after him? And what I liked about this is that I'm gonna have to talk spoilers about it, I guess, because they get into your typical battle, right? And Juggernaut's working with damage control right now. He's trying to change his persona. He's had meetings with Xavier. He can't come to Krakoa. He's trying, Xavier's telling him, you've got to be a better man out here. Help mutants, prove to me, I know you can do it. And what I talked about in my Juggernaut number 1 review was that I like seeing a character that's a villain actually try to make a real attempt at change. We've been, it's always, nobody ever gets rehabilitated. Everybody just keeps on going into different form of bad. And in this, after the events of right before Age of X-Man, if you can believe it, is the last time really that Juggernaut was around. Magic ripped out the gem of Sidorak and tossed him into limbo. And he dragged his armor through limbo, counting 1 billion bottles of beer on the wall, till he finally reached this place, and it said, if you got to leave all this behind you. And that was the step in his direction of becoming something more than a guy who knocks down buildings. Now he's a guy that tries to help clean up the buildings. But in this issue, it deals with that history and that past of, you want to change who you are, but you also have to face up to what you did. But they do it in a way where they're trying to make the Hulk, face what he's done in this town that he demolished, and that it was this town that wanted the Hulk. And Juggernaut, kind of surprisingly, captures him, and he's got him in front of this whole town. And you feel like, why is he, you could tell that Hulk could just get out of here if he wanted to. But the whole point of it was Hulk to show people and Kane Marco that you guys want to, you came after me. He kind of finds it funny that Kane Marco's coming after him for trashing towns. And says, you want to be a better person. Well, first you have to realize that you're just as bad as me. If you want to start to become a better person, you have to start recognizing that a little bit better. And it would just, I loved that instead of being just two guys punching each other till they end up in some kind of dumb draw, it deals with that, a villain having to face that, you can try to go down the road to redemption, but you have to start realizing the damage that you caused along the way. Otherwise, you might find it real easy to go back to that person that does all that damage. And I just thought that was a really interesting take on it. It surprised the heck out of me. And I know it's because of the writer.
Pretty different, yeah.
That Fabian brought something different here to this what would normally just be a throwaway book, in my opinion. You know, how many times has Hulk and Juggernaut gone toe to toe, or Juggernaut and Thing, or, you know, all these big guys like are interchangeable, like, you know, Juggernaut and Colossus or whoever. And instead they made it about, because Immortal Hulk is how he is right now, it became more of a character piece than a beat 'em up. And if they can continue to do that in this limited series, it makes me wish that if they could continue it like that, I don't want it to be a limited series. I want it to be an ongoing series. I want to follow a villain who is going down a better road. Like I said, because all we ever seem to go down is the same roads. Just what silly scheme does Juggernaut have this week? And this is doing something different with that, and I really appreciate that. So yeah, that's the next book. Does anybody have anything to add to it?
No, I'm not reading it. Just that sounds pretty cool. Very unique, you know, completely different take on that. I did kind of glance at it. My buddy's buying Juggernaut, and I glanced at it. I think the whole, they were bringing in the whole modern, like they were going live and watching the fight on YouTube. I thought that was pretty cool. So that's a lot of neat concepts in that book that are very different than, you know, kind of just the normal, like you're saying. So yeah, pretty awesome.
Yeah. The next book is one that I don't even read this book normally, or, you know, any iteration of this book. And I know you had talked about it in a text when I mentioned it, and that's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Last Ronin.
It was so good, dude. So good.
Yeah, why don't you talk about this for a minute before I talk about it, because this one really surprised me.
Well, you know, I just like yourself, I don't really read this title, and so this, I'm a big fan of dystopian literature, right? So like, I hate to be cliche or anything, but of course I'm going to talk about 1984. It's a big dystopian book, of course, and there's so many others, of course, similar to it. But this was like kind of like that take on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in a sense, and one of them, who of course, you know, his identity is a secret through the whole book, but it's almost like the last turtle warring and fighting away hordes of bad guys. And what I loved about the book was the emotional feeling that was behind it, but it was non-stop action, and that's pretty rare. Usually when you think of action books, it's just people fighting. This felt emotional through the entire thing, and like I'm not even emotionally connected to Shredder or any of these characters. And it pulled on my heartstrings a little bit. That's cool when you can have a nonstop action book that just kind of makes you feel something. I liked it. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, I had a connection when I was a kid. I grew up with this. I didn't grow up with the comic though. I used to own #1 a long time ago. I currently have, for some reason, somebody gave me a whole bunch of long boxes, and inside was like number 5 and 6.
Cool.
But I was familiar with the cartoon. I was familiar with the movies. I was familiar with the action figures. I was all about it back in those days, in the late 80s, early 90s. I could still remember sitting in the front row corner, shared a seat with another person for the first Ninja Turtle movie, and like having to watch it like this, because we were like, oh god, I mean, like 15 or something like that, and we were all about Ninja Turtles. But then I just outgrew it, and I never really looked back, even though I can think back fondly of them, but I've never really read them. But I heard about the premise of this book, and you know, I'm not going to tell you who this is.
Good.
It makes another. If this makes next month, then I figure we'll talk about it. Mm-hmm. But this, yeah, like the dystopian future, it made me think of Dark Knight Returns.
Mm-hmm.
just this guy who's on a suicide mission to stop the evil that took the lives of everybody else. That I'm not going to make it out of here, but neither is this.
Yeah.
And yes, the art, the way that they tell the story, that it's pretty much nonstop action, but had so much heart, and the fact that the other turtles are there,
Yes.
it made me think so much of Old Man Hawkeye.
Yeah. Them following him around and being the voice in his head. It was so cool.
But you don't know which ones either,
Right.
you know, and it's just, you can hear them. And I kept trying to think, which one is this? Which one is that? Oh, maybe that's that one. And I was really intrigued by that mystery of it all and the psychology of it all. And yeah, I don't care about Shredder. I don't care about Stegman and any of that stuff, really. Or just the universe itself. I do like the Turtles as characters. They just don't really do anything for me as an adult now. But it kind of makes me wish that I could go back and like find a point to just go and jump back on board and read these. But this is like just a really special story that like also makes me think of like Batman Beyond a little bit. Just with the way some of the characters are, like future wise, like these kind of different, like this isn't the Joker gang, this isn't really the Foot Clan that we know, that kind of thing. And the fact that we don't know which turtle it is, but that we have that really great flashback of like when he gets really hurt, you think it's all over, and it's not. And I'm not going to say what turtle it is, but then you get that other great cameo at the end.
Oh,
Because through the whole thing, you're just
cool.
watching this action take place, and you're more focused on him. And then at the end, I'm just going to say, you know, all of a sudden there's April O'Neil. And I was like, oh, like I didn't even think that about this character in this story or why she would be here, even though I know she's part of, you know, a big part of the lore. And I thought that was a great topper. And yes, if this makes next month's list, and I have a feeling it will, we'll talk about all the other stuff. But yeah, the way that they told the story in an emotional way through all the action at the same time. And plus just being a really badass ninja still, like the way he talks about being in control, you know, knowing your surroundings, how to still take down these things. It gave me a respect for the Turtles that I don't really have anymore. Like that when written seriously, and not too seriously, but pretty seriously, they are interesting characters. They can be interesting characters. And the people who love it would disagree with me right now, and they'd be like, they were always great, and that's fine.
It pulled me back into the lore as well, man, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, not enough to make me suddenly just buy everything Ninja Turtles again, but I think this is a nice, you know, nod to my childhood that, you know, and again, it's not really in continuity per se for their book either. It's just a fun, like limited series. And I think it's coming out at the perfect time too, where people really need some fun distractions. Whether it be something familiar or something that you haven't thought about in a long time. This book, it was hard to get my hands on.
Yeah, I bet. I bet. Yeah, that sold out quick.
For all the variants and everything, I still had a hard time. I picked up 2 copies, not because I was being greedy, but because I wasn't sure if one would go through or not.
Yeah, like, this is gonna go up in price so fast, man.
So yeah, that's that one. That's that one. The next book we're going to talk about is Kieran Gillen and Dan Mora and Tamara Bonvillain's Once and Future.
It's a great book. I'm not caught up, but dude, you know what the most unique thing about this is? Tamara Bonvillain's colors blew me away.
Oh my God.
I became a fan of hers after seeing this book and reading the first arc.
Yeah, it's like, have you ever seen like some Italian horror that uses like lots of really bright almost neon like colors in the
Right.
filmmaking processes of these movies that are very surreal,
I haven't, but
like Suspiria and things like that.
uh,
It's one of the things that makes me think of, yeah, because this book just literally spills off the page.
yeah,
Like it just explodes with color and excitement and action. And I mean, I just, every issue just says the kings are undead. And I was late to the party on this one.
mm-hmm.
And I'm not a trade. I don't like getting trades.
Mm.
I will if I absolutely have to.
Yeah.
I can't find it anywhere else. I like to be a single issue guy. So tracking down the first few issues was hard because it was really hot for a minute, and it was supposed to be a limited series, and now here we are. It's issue 12. I think that's
Right.
what Wildebeard said about it, was that this really was not going to be that long of a thing, and now we're just getting started.
Uh-huh.
And I love this because we were following a kind of character that you don't see, and that's an elderly character being the main protagonist, the one who knows what to do, the one that's really in charge, and you've got the younger person just trying to keep up. And I love it because it also makes me think of it reminds me of Buffy for some reason, of just
A little
this
bit, huh?
like the guy who's got to try to, he's kind of part of this old thing, and he has to like try to learn by this kind of wild and crazy grandma who's living in a nursing home, and next thing you know he's fighting undead King Arthur and Merlin, and dealing with characters from books like Beowulf and Grendel, and how all these things are spilling out of literature. And you've got her with the chainsaw, and the unique look of all the monsters and the creatures in this book, and the writing. It never slows down once it gets going. And there's a whole lot to talk about here, and in order to talk about it, you really have to spoil it. But I mean, it dives into, like, the King Arthur stuff has been done to death, and especially in movies.
Uh-huh.
And so to read something like this, when I first heard about it, I was kind of turned off. Like, I don't really care about all this King Arthur stuff anymore. But what they're doing here is so weird and so fun that I'm surprised that I haven't gone after all of Gillen's books, because I know he worked on X-Men and other things in like the past 10 years or so. But again, having this like elderly character be like the main character pretty much, and this world where Arthur and Merlin are trying to take over, and you've got them now working into the government, trying to manipulate the government around them. It's just, it never fails to be like, whenever I see it in my in the new releases for that week, I just get all kinds of happy, and it takes me about 2 seconds to read. But if you guys haven't picked it up, definitely try to pick up once in future, at least the trades, even though I say don't.
Yeah,
do
trades. Time for sure.
Okay, we are up to Skip's next book, and I did pick it up today, like I said, but I didn't read it because I want to hear about it. I don't care if you spoil it for me, but we're talking about Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips's Pulp.
Yes, yeah, Pulp, an amazing book. I think easily my favorite duo, my favorite writer-artist combination in comics right now, like especially for consistency. I fell onto Criminal, the 2019 run, really hard. And I just loved so much about it. So finally, once they wrapped up that run and what that whole storyline was going to be, they told us all that they would take a break, but they're going to drop like a tiny little like novella hardcover story. And so, I mean, I knew I was going to pick it up. And I was just hoping that I loved it as much as I loved everything that they had done with that Criminal run, especially issues 2 and 3, which they ended up putting in a hardcover too, called Bad Weekend, which to anybody that hasn't read it, it's literally a love letter to the comic book community and especially comic book creators. Like, especially you definitely see some homages and some nods to Kirby and Ditko and all sorts of people in there. But that was easily like my favorite story that I had read in all of the 2010s. Yeah, probably all of the 2010s. It's just, I mean, like every part of it, I have all of the feelings. And then when I get to the end, it just ends. And I just have like this, like a big smile on my face. Like I'm 5 years old, all over again. And I'm eating my favorite snack. It's just wholly fulfilling. So we come into this book and it's really cool because Ed Brubaker, I just love his moodiness, his noir feel. It's very visceral. And this story is essentially about a writer during the Depression era that writes pulp comics, specifically like Western comics about these characters, specifically the Red River Kid. And they're doing really well. But of course, it's during the Depression and everybody's falling on hard times. And this guy is down to his last little bit of money. He turns his story in. He learns that editorial has kicked down another pay cut. So instead of being, I think it was 3 cents a word, it's down to 2 cents a word. So he takes a smaller cut and slaps like $120 in his pocket. The guy goes, the writer goes out, is going to get on the train to get back home a little sooner and sees like an Orthodox Jewish kid just getting picked on just by some jerks, speaks up, says something, and then kind of ends up getting his clock clean, so to speak. And while he's getting beat up, like things go even worse. He starts to have a heart attack. The guys make away with his money and he has to go back to his, effectively his wife, at that time. And, but he doesn't want to let her know what happens. The twist is very interesting. We find out that the stories that he's actually writing about, the Red River Kid and all these stories that everybody's loving, is actually his past life. He used to be a, basically like an old outlaw, and it even I love how Brubaker, all of his stuff that surrounds around crime, that centers around crime, he always comes up with the most believable reasons why people that would have nothing to do with the lifestyle fall into crime. So you're always just like, that makes sense. You were out there and you had a barn and these guys were trying to come up and buy out the land and you wouldn't sell your land. So they had guys come out and set your barn on, set your whole thing on fire and shoot up your home, and then from there, you went back later because they killed your brother to get revenge on them. And then after you started shooting at people, then, you had no home to go back to. So you start robbing people because you got comfortable with having a gun. And as it goes and it goes. So I don't want to completely spoil what happens. And again, I know you're not too worried about that, but I wanted to spoil that twist because I thought that was really creative. And the other part was it takes a whole nother turn into a much deeper story. One of the guys that used to follow him, like in his old outlaw ways, kind of catches up to him. And as he fell on hard times and as he only had $40 left to his name until he got that $120, which got stolen from him as he was having a heart attack, he kind of comes up, like, hey, they tell me I don't have much time left. The doctor said I'm on borrowed time with this bad ticker. So I got to find one more way to get, my lady who, loved me after all this stuff, to leave her with some money. So he finds another crime to do. And right as he's about to do it, someone from his past catches up with him, and then they dive into a whole nother thing that has an amazing twist within there too. So I just can't say enough about this book. The art from Sean Phillips, with Jacob Phillips, his son, doing the colors for it. So you got this really cool synergy between, kind of like how the Dodsons do. We were talking about Rocketeers, and I think about, was it like Minutemen or whatever? Like the dynamic between a husband and wife, and there's a synergy there. This synergy between this father and son just brings this relationship, and you feel it through the comic. It's just really cool. And then Ed Brubaker with these really visceral words, and it's just really an amazing book. Everybody that I've suggested to it that normally doesn't has literally fallen in love with the book.
I've heard nothing but amazing things about this
I'm
book.
really excited to pick this.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just saying I've heard nothing but amazing stuff about this. It's on my list. It's on my to read list for sure.
Yeah, I'm really excited to check this book out. I love a story about like a historical kind of look at stuff, and characters like this that are the people who kind of escaped their past, people who escaped history didn't catch up to them. You know, a lot of people just were able to, in the Old West, if you lived and you got away with it, you still had a way to create another life for yourself. And
Right.
I really like that idea of just kind of disappearing back into the crowd, and then stories where that kind of creeps back into your life. I dig that a lot. And your description of it, man, I can't wait to it. Cause I don't really know as much about Brubaker as other writers recently. I've heard good things about people liking his Captain America run, and nothing but good things about Criminal. And it was one of those books where I couldn't get all the issues, and now I've been trying to track them down. So it's like I have another project right now that I'm trying to finish, but now after this, I'm gonna probably try to get my hands on all of Criminal, because I only hear good things about Brubaker's work on that, and now I've only been hearing good things about Pulp, and then from hearing it from your mouth, I know that I'm going to dig it a lot, because like I said, I love that kind of historical story of the guys who got out and can never fully get out. You know, like it's I don't know if it's karma or what, but like I just dig that. And somebody who knows how to write crime, it's really, really write it. Not just what we see all the time, Batman, you know, like the crime in Gotham and whatever, but real crime and real people and what, you know, they really go through, and then maybe throw in some weird twists that make it entertaining at the same time is rare. And
speaking of what you said about like kind of people and real people, I wanted to kind of leave everyone with this. This is an excerpt from the book. It says, that was one of the problems with getting older. You hit an age where everyone either ignores you or treats you like some hassle they're being forced to deal with. But inside, you still feel like the same person you were 30 or 40 years ago. You don't think of yourself as the man you see in the mirror. At least I didn't.
Man, that is some straight up film noir.
That's cool.
Type of writing right there, man.
That's legit. I dig it.
Yeah. That's like the drop the mic on somebody kind of moment where you're just like, yep, it's all you need to hear right there. Awesome. Because I usually take the books I haven't read yet with me to work. I'm taking Pulp with me tomorrow, and I'll let the rest of the books sit for Tuesday, because now I have to. But to jump ahead, not to jump too far past this, does anybody else have anything to say about Pulp? Okay. The next book we're talking about is Rick Remender's The Scumbag. Now, I actually haven't heard anybody's opinion on this book. All I know is how well it sold pre-sales. Remender, La Rosa, Denizio, the world's fate rests with the worst person on it. I have to agree. This guy is one of the worst people I've ever read in my life. He's disgusting. He's despicable. I know people like this. It's a more cartoonish version of some of the people I've met in my life. Maybe an amalgamation of several of them. I don't know if I've met everyone. You know, I don't think I've met anyone that has all the attributes that the Scumbag has. But boy, oh boy, does this book, I wanted to be ashamed of myself for liking it so much.
Sure. Yeah, I like characters like that too.
Because there's no reason. This isn't like where I like during Breaking Bad. I was on board with anything Walter White did.
Yeah.
Because I just wanted to see the character journey. I did not care if he blew up the world. I just was so fascinated with the character that I didn't want anything to get in his way. I wanted to see him get all the way to the end, and then whatever happens in the end happens in the end, fine. And then I can go back and look at it differently later on. And that's what I feel about this book, is that in order for me to enjoy it, I have to completely strap in and just let this character do whatever it needs to do until the end of it. And then I can judge it maybe later on. Because I love this, like the first line. Charles Bukowski said, "The problem with the world is that the intelligent people are full of doubts, while the stupid ones are full of confidence. No man better proves that point than the one I'm about to introduce you to." And this guy, I mean, he says he's a relic of a bygone era, and boy, howdy is he. Ernie Ray Clementine. What a name. I mean, okay, first off, I know people that go by 3 names where I live, and there's not much to say. I mean, this guy is just, he's a junkie. He's an alcoholic. He looks like 20 miles of bad road. He's just always looking for a scam. He's always looking for a fix. He just does not have friends. They don't really like him. Nobody cares. You know, he's just always around. He's that guy. And he's on a bet. Like, he's lost any kind of shame to just, you don't even know if how this character thinks of himself. There's like a bit of a character portrait at the end of here, like a profile that says, underneath his bravado and notions of heroic personal freedom is an unspoken need for respect, validation, and love. And yeah, that, like, again, like I said, I know people like this that have that. They are so deep into that personality that you can't tell that they are still a person underneath it all. And then all the things that they are on the outside, you know, there's still that person somewhere deep down inside that just, even if it's that big, is there. And so I guess, like, the hope of this book is that he somehow, there's like that nugget that somehow kind of reaches to the surface for a second. But I also wouldn't be surprised if none of that happens. And I'm kind of ashamed to say again that I kind of hope it doesn't go the way that everybody would like usually follow, like the redemption or hero story. Because in this, he ends up, you know, he's on the street trying to get a fix. He ends up in the middle of a superhero fight, or kind of a superhero fight. These two people are battling it out in front of him, and he's just trying to shakily put the needle in his arm. And they're fighting over a needle themselves, and bing, bang, boom, things happen. He ends up taking this serum that's like a superpower serum, where he ends up getting super speed, super strength, X-ray vision. The guy who they need to solve this huge problem, there's a bomb that's going to go off in 10 minutes. And this guy's talking about, well, what's in it for me? You know, even though there's only 10 minutes left before the whole bomb goes off. And it's just unabashedly, unapologetically despicable, but not like, Remender's so good at it being able to still pull back where it's like, it's not gratuitous as far as, like, I don't feel like I'm watching exploitation or something like that, like a 70s B movie exploitation, where it's just, you know, you're not supposed to like this guy. You know, you're supposed to be like disgusted by this guy. And yet, like a car wreck, we can't but slow down and watch it as it goes by. And again, in a world full of just regular books, I applaud, you know, Remender going this far with a character right now in this world, when especially with, like, you know, cancel culture and woke culture and people that wanting to just, no, you can't do a book like this, and Remender saying, yes, I can. And guess what? Some of you are going to like it. Some of you aren't. If you
that
don't
sounds like a really fun premise.
I absolutely understand why you wouldn't like this book.
Yeah.
But I love it. I will ride the Remender train all the way to the end. He's gained a lot of We were talking before the show about my remender bender that I've been on all 2020, and I'm excited to have a new book of his to, latch onto for the rest of this year and into the next. I don't know if anybody else has anything else to say about it before we move on.
Just sounds cool. Yeah.
Sounds cool. Okay, we are back with another one of Skip's. Like I said, I wasn't able to find any for myself, but we're talking about That Texas Blood. Skip.
That Texas Blood. Yes. Kind of continuing a theme. We were talking earlier about Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, and I mentioned Jacob Phillips, his son, who was doing the colors for Pulp and had done the colors for that criminal run that had ended recently. He and Chris Condon had started their own book where Jacob Phillips is doing the art and the colors, called That Texas Blood. This is issue number 1. They are currently on number 5. Because I haven't heard a lot of people talk a lot about That Texas Blood, I figured it might be best that I do just keep it to issue number 1, because I did grab issue number 1 and then just read the rest of them all last month. But very interesting story, kind of similar with the like kind of thriller noir type theme. They're out in Texas. You have this old sheriff who is kind of like, I don't think he's chief, but he's like he's like in management, obviously, of the sheriff's department out there in Texas. And it is very much kind of like a slice of life thing. You go into like the day of the life of him. It's his birthday. His wife's cooking for him. But of course, she's telling him like, you need to go pick this up for your birthday. And you need to go pick this up so I can finish cooking you this. So all of those things happen. But as he's going around and, trying to conduct his business, and he's given his wife one of the radios. So like sometimes he'll be talking to someone and she'll break in like if she's listening in on the conversation. They have to be like, hey, this is supposed to be for police business only. She's like, well, he's my husband, so it's my business too. And they're like, hey, how's it going, Miss Smith or whatever. It's pretty funny. But within it, as you go on a day in the life of them, you start to see that there's some things going on in the town naturally that are kind of shaking things up. And finally, towards the end, we find out that there is some sort of like kind of paranormal activity closer on the side of kind of like demons, kind of zombie-esque type thing going on. And now this is an additional thing outside of the normal day-to-day things that he has to deal with that is going to be coming in and kind of affecting his day. But sure enough, I can tell you with reading the issues later on down the line, a lot of those things kind of tie back. Because he's older, I want to say he's like in his 60s. It kind of ties back to a lot of the things, a lot of his story that we didn't get up until that point. So they do a really good job of establishing the character, establishing the city as its own character, the town within Texas as its own character, and then this kind of bloody new paranormal force that's creeping up that feels random at first, but then you start to realize it has a very strong tie to the core character. And a lot of what we get like out of this book, I was really proud of Jacob Phillips for, if you know anything about Sean Phillips and kind of his art, it's very obvious again that it's his son, but I was not sure how he would do with sequential art because I'd only seen his colors, and I was very proud of everything that he had done. He does really good panel layout. He does really good of establishing, shots and then kind of pulling back and allowing you a good field of view to watch these characters kind of go through their life. And a lot of they say the devil's in the details. A lot of the juice is in the details of the conversations of the book, and even how he brought around like the episode ultimately ends. I will spoil that. It ultimately ends with someone who he went and checked on. It was a lady in the town that everybody knows, and everybody knows her jerk, abusive boyfriend. Well, she didn't show up to work. He got the call that something had happened to her, and then the boyfriend darted out the house, and then the boyfriend zooms by him as he finally goes and picks up the thing that his wife told him to get for his little birthday dinner. And he goes, he stops the guy, he tells him to get out the car, and the guy just shoots himself and blows his own brains out. And sure enough, when the guy goes and he looks in the back of the car, it was that dinner dish that was supposed to be delivered, and he has to get back on the radio and tell the wife, well, I found the dinner dish.
Man.
Yeah, so it was really good writing. I think anybody that pick it up, if you are Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips fan, Chris Condon and Jacob Phillips do a really good job of kind of filling that void, but also not being painted by numbers and doing their own story. It was really good. Yeah,
that one I'm really kicking myself about because they were promoting it at my comic book store, and I think at the time it was more like, do you really need to pick up another number one? Do you need to pick up another book? And hey, if you need to, you can always, it'll probably still be there. Like not everything's flying off the shelves. And, I went in there to pick it up. I was pretty confident that I would find them, there. And no, there's this nice big empty spot where all the issues were. And now I really I was going to pick it up because it was something that was interesting because it makes me think again, like pulp a little bit or for like movie wise, since I love movies as well. Mm-hmm. I was thinking that this sounded like a very like a Hell or High Water kind of thing, kind of storytelling, like Sheridan stuff, yes. Like Wind River and things like that. The kind of or like No Country for Old Men kind of thing.
Literally mash the last two together, especially No Country for Old Men. Bring those two together. So very much the slice of life, and then very much like this. Who is this unstoppable force just kind of going around? Like you're not. You look like a man, but you're not a man. There's something you're almost possessed. How you're going around and just picking people out. Yeah, good call.
Yeah. So that's another one I got to put on the list to pick it up, and I hope that people that watch this also get the good vibes from that, because again, independent books, man, to me are where it's been at. You have a concise story, there's a beginning, middle, and end. There's everybody, they usually know where they're going with it. You don't got to worry about like, will this person be in a different book or continuity and all those things that get bogged down in the big two. And while I love what I love, I just, again, when I hear about stories like this, it's like, this is why I'm moving more towards independence. Plus, when they do, adapt these things into movies, these are the ones that usually end up being the best things.
Yep.
Right. The ones that people have less controversy over, and people will go, that was a comic book.
Yeah.
So many people like, yeah, Hellboy. Somebody says Hellboy is a comic book. You go, oh yeah, of course it was. But then you say something else like, and that comes out of nowhere. It just has like a regular sounding story. Like go back to like Ghost World, stuff like that.
Right.
Like that's a comic book? Like that? I thought there was just a movie with Scarlett Johansson, like, no. It's,
right.
This is where it's all at.
I agree fully.
Awesome. Next book, we're almost to the ones that we all several of us agreed on. But first, we got to talk about, because again, this would have made my list because I'm really digging it, and I hope that Chase is back with us because we're talking about Thor number 8 by Donny Cates, and Aaron Cooter is stepping in for Nick Klein right now and Matt Wilson. I've been digging what Donny Cates has been doing, but Chase, why don't you tell us about Thor number 8 and why this is one of the books you love this month?
I liked it a lot. And it's kind of funny. This is going to sound funny. It was almost like a guilty pleasure book because I don't like humor very much. And I usually don't have like, I'll say this. There was a little bit of cliche kind of writing to it that made me... I liked it. I don't know why I liked the cliches in it so much, but it was the cute humor at the end, tying up that so nicely, and just having the ex-con walk back into his normal life after being Thor and getting to ride on Mjolnir. I thought it was a lot of fun, and it was fun in a way that made me kind of feel guilty because I don't like books that are silly like that. I really like very dark and ominous kind of stuff. But I like this. I thought it was cool. You know, I like a lot of what Cates does. But this isn't generally my favorite kind of Cates writing, and I still liked it. He's just really good at what he does anyway, you know? So it was fun. Kind of lighthearted. It was neat.
Yeah, this and one of the things I like about it is the beginning and how then it just changes because it's got that very serious Asgardian stuff at the beginning, you know, where they're dealing with the book, you know, with the life tree on it and talking about, you know, the infinite pages and all these stories that are told within it. And you get, you know, like even the color and the way it's drawn is different and more, you know, muted color, and talking about like looking into the book and the stories that are in there and the history and what it all means. And then it just comes down to, but he would find no mention of this. And we just cut to, you know, this guy in a field holding Mjolnir and Tony Stark trying to get everybody to hold back. Like it changes that it's an unexpected turn in this book.
Yeah, it kind of was.
And I'm not a big Tony Stark fan. I loved Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, but I'm not a big Iron Man fan in general. And I wasn't always a big Thor fan in general.
Yeah, me too.
But what I like about stories like this, and well, Cates is doing a great job with Thor, but what I like about this is, yes, the humor, but also it Thor's not just being what he is a lot of times, which is, you know, just spouting off Asgardian stuff and, oh, I'm gonna, you know, like real pomp and circumstance and just really flowing with that, you know, I don't know, the over the top, almost Shakespearean God stuff.
Right.
And this, it's about a guy, he's having problems with Mjolnir. Why is everybody able to pick it up? And they have that, you know, him and Tony having it out. You know, we deal with the whole fact that Tony put his phone number on the side of Mjolnir and the revenge that Thor got, and Tony still being like, or no, did he put Tony's phone number on it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Tony being mad, and he's like, well, you did this and you did that. But in the end, it's Thor giving this guy a good day, letting him ride Mjolnir around instead of being like the typical Thor story.
Yeah, it was really feel good like that. It had a really good wrap up to that small arc, you know, those 5 issues.
Because it's leading Thor to where he needs to go next, where we're going to be talking about Donald Blake next. Mm-hmm. And I'm digging, because especially since where this Cates' arc started on Thor, with the Black Winter and everything that we dealt with Galactus and all. I mean, it was all super dark, heavy, real heavy. I mean, he's giving Beta Ray Bill a beatdown and putting Galactus in his place. And now we're having this small, quiet little story, this nice little story as we lead towards, you know, the next arc of Thor's troubles and doing it in a fun way, even though we know that his emotional state is really heavy right now. And that's something that Cates is handling really, really well. And what could just be, you know, if you're not really paying attention or you're not really that interested, you're just kind of reading it to read it. There's so much going on behind the scenes of the book characters. And I think,
you know what?
Brilliant. And it would, and again, this was another one that was going to make my list because I love what Cates is doing with Thor.
Tremendous. So, you know, you and I were talking about, you know, and you mentioned it earlier about, like, you know, writing really being the thing that kind of is drawing us both into comic books a little bit over the art. And I would say that's definitely true about this one issue. You know, the art's good, but I mean, you know, the writing was fantastic. And that kind of thing has gotten me to the point to where I don't follow characters around. I follow writers around, you know, even if it's a character that I don't really read, like Thor. Cates is writing it. I'm going to check it out because he's just one of the best at Marvel. And there's, you know, I just have an affinity to really prefer certain writers, and Cates is one of them. So, yeah.
Excellent. Do you have anything to add, Skip?
No. It sounds like it's a fun and interesting story. Yeah, I just haven't been much into Thor lately. I think the last Thor story that I read was, I believe it was the Unworthy Thor by Jason Aaron, and I did really enjoy that. But no, just haven't jumped on this one. But I am thrilled that a lot of people are getting excitement from this book, and Matt Wilson is a buddy of mine, so I'm really psyched that people are just kind of continuing to support him.
Excellent. Okay, the next book we have is Undiscovered Country, number 9. Now, this one I'm not going to apologize for, because I want to support this book so hardcore that I told my comic book shop I want the variant that always
comes. I love Snyder. Snyder's awesome.
Soule and Snyder have put together a book that is, again, every time I know it's in my pull list for the week, I get so excited. I'm glad that I read things alphabetically when I get them. So I'm glad it's at the end with like you. So I know it's like that thing I'm waiting for, that dessert at the end of my meal, because Undiscovered Country for me is by far one of it's in my top 5 books of the year. Because the way they're telling this story, I love the kind of flashback to the outside world of what's been going on with these characters before and how that relates to what's going on in the story presently. I love the actual unveiling each issue of the next section of the world that they see. They're always discovering new things about this new America that's been working, on its own in its own time reality, like its own reality, basically. But this issue in particular, they give us like a lot of explanation of some of the whys things are going on in America after they shut themselves off. We get more into the 2 main protagonists, Daniel and Charlotte, who were pushed out of America by their parents and are now in there facing them, but it's not them. It can't be them, or is it them? And in this section of the book, they're in like a very technological area of America. And besides them dealing with the parents that they haven't seen in like 15, 20 years, they also get to deal with the new technologies that they're all being presented with. Like this whole place it's made of stuff that can take your thoughts and make them real and recreate basically anything from your mind. And then you've got like what's going on with the villain, the Destiny Man, who's in pursuit, who wants to control all of this, and the difficulties that he's facing. We don't know what he looks like. He's clearly mutated into different. He's got like a lobster claw for an arm. But we get this big exposition dump that explains so much of like the sectioning off of America and how basically America became ungovernable. Too many people were wanting things their own way, their own separate ways. So you had like, just like the original 13 colonies, there were 13 different territories, each devoted to a different set of ideals, each contributing to the whole. So you had the Destiny section, which was like they had no desire for regulation or collectivism. There was the libertarian extreme. Destiny contributed food. Then there was the technological area. But then everybody started just not caring about the other sections and how it just devolved into chaos. And it's a lot of information that, after 9 issues is nice to get in this book. And at the same time, characters are starting to reveal, some of their true intentions, because you knew going into this that not everybody was being on the up and up with why they were really there. And it's just such a fun, interesting adventure that always just keeps peeling back things you didn't know, revealing things you didn't know, and always being so original, throwing just some of the wildest sci-fi ideas out there, mixed with, you know, the way that America is right now and how it, you know, is, I'm not going to say it very well could be, but how a lot of people are divided in this country into different sections of ideals and belief systems. That it's a challenging book. It's one of the most imaginative books, one of the most original books. And I'm trying not to spoil really too much about it, because it, like books like Oblivion Song, you know, where you just don't want to tell anybody anything about it.
Yeah.
You have to pick it up to read it, to believe it. If you can pick up the first trade, you're probably going to be pretty hooked on it. It almost always makes the list for me every month, not for like the show, just for the show, but like whenever I put together a list of my own of what was the best that I read, Undiscovered Country is almost always at like right at the top. And I don't know if either of you guys are reading it, but
you know, I started out, and it didn't fit my budget, unfortunately. I love Snyder, and and honestly, you know, I just think he's a really cool guy. Like I just like him, and he's a good writer too, of course. It wasn't in my budget, so I couldn't keep going. I have a few books that were on your list that I just, you know, I had to cut them. I just did. But it's a great book. I do say that,
like,
it was difficult to cut it.
Be able to interpret it to screen or television or streaming or whatever, and that's fine, because I would not want him to do it wrong.
Yeah.
Because it's just so big and so broad. But I mean, I see it in my head as like a big movie going on, and I just, again, if you know what I'm talking about, Undiscovered Country, just such a fun. That's the book that usually puts a big smile on my face every month.
Right.
So for the last one of the main group of books, we're talking about two, and this was Chase's book. It would have made my honorable mentions, but since he had it on the list, I just put it in like regular. We're talking about Wolverine, number 6, and X-Force, number 13. The the X of Swords two-parter that's basically one story. That's why we're going to talk about it as one story, because this is Ben Percy and Bogdanovic both doing what they do best right now, especially Benjamin Percy, writing Wolverine. I did also, yes, I got the, dang it, the Alex Ross
nice
variants.
Nice. Yeah, those are good.
But Chase, let's talk about Wolverine and X-Force.
Dude, so I'll be honest, you know, I like half of what's going on in Ten of Swords event a lot. And this is my favorite part of the whole entire freaking thing. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a huge Wolverine fan as it is, but man, you know, and I talked about it in my reviews. Bogdanovich and Percy were born to work together and write Wolverine and draw him. That's literally, I mean, if we could have those two on an ongoing that lasted indefinitely, and I mean through all of time, longer than Claremont's run of the X-Men, that would probably make me the happiest X-Men fan on the face of this planet. You know, the whole entire book, of course, it was, you know, all one story, just to be continued, same writer, same artist. And the whole entire time I was reading it, I felt like I was reading classic Wolverine comic books. I felt like they weren't just right for the character, but they were right for just for the feels. And I don't know how else to describe it other than the feeling that I have always gotten from classic Wolverine. It was right there. So, you know, people who aren't involved in Ten of Swords, you know, and I'll tell people straight up, you know, Ten of Swords, it's not my favorite event. You can skip it and still love the books in that series that you love. And Wolverine and X-Force, in my opinion, gosh, they're even better than the flagship X-Men. And, and don't get me wrong, I feel like Hickman's one of my favorite writers in all the comics. He really is right up there, but oh my gosh. I would say this, don't just check out these 2 issues, but put X-Force and Wolverine on your pull list. But this was the story, of course, of Wolverine going and finding his blade. So he has to face some demons, and it's kind of emotional for him, because he has to face Muramasa, and there's some history there. Yeah, I can't recommend this enough. This is probably my favorite. These are probably my favorite 2 comics that I've read all year, to be honest with you. So
wow.
Yeah. I loved it. It was my favorite thing I read in comics this year. It's so legit. Yeah. And not even 10 of Swords isn't really doing it for me, but these 2, I mean, you could take them away from the whole thing and it's just perfect, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm very opinionated about it.
No. Is there anything particular in the issues that you think really like images or whatever that you really take away from this before I jump in here?
It's the biggest thing for me is always writing. And so the way that Benjamin Percy writes prose, the way that he writes comics, in this issue, it was so dark. And of course, the subject matter we're talking about is just intense because he has to go to hell. It was the writing, to be honest with you. Don't get me wrong, Bogdanovich is amazing, but the writing was absolutely incredible. And I can't pick out any one small part of it. But I will say this, the only part that I think is important for me to say, I agree 100% with Wolverine on his perspective of how he feels about Krakoa. I'm like, guys, this island tried to kill all of you. What are you doing? Why are you trying to live on this island? It's going to end up murdering all of you people. And I think he's the only one that's really smelling that out. But yeah, great writing. That was what got me.
Yeah, without going into the whole Dawn of X thing really too hard, everybody kind of tends to agree that Wolverine's this untouched character by the whole thing, even though he might be in this polyamorous whatever relationship with Cyclops and Jean. He's still the most like his character. I think there's still some other people out there like Gambit that are a lot still themselves, not trusting the system.
Oh yeah, and Apocalypse. There's no reason to trust Apocalypse.
Yeah. And bringing it up like, this place is going to kill you. Remember like a long time ago, like we literally went through this place, it's the writing. It's classic Wolverine. We've got him facing off against Silver Samurai, for information, not for a long dragged out fight, but just, I like that, even though people go, well, what's the consequences? There doesn't have to be any consequences to me. I just like them dealing with this. Then you got you got characters like the Hand in here, people that he's faced before, and there are all these old demons that he's been facing throughout Percy's run. And you can read these books I forgot that I was reading a Ten of Swords section.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
It's just Wolverine doing what he does best.
That's
and right now what he has to do is get this sword to be part of this contest. And the only thing that worries me is, what they set up as the rules for this contest. And I don't want the easy, everybody, I think, once they set up the rules for this contest, that if you die in Otherworld, you can come back, but that died, he's gone forever. And so everybody, I think their sphincters tighten real hard when they think that Wolverine's on when the Wolverine that we love right now, being written right by the guy who writes him the best, could be taken away from us. It freaks me out, because Wolverine again is also Wolverine and X-Force are the 2 best books in the X world right now. It's just like I don't know anybody that really disagrees with that. Anybody that likes the other books, look, I still pick up everything but a couple.
Yeah, me too. Hellions is great. Hellions is really good.
They're the books that you can read and not really have to worry about the rest of the stuff. because you can read. They usually, while X-Force might deal with some things that are going on, they're usually written so well by Percy that you can kind of ignore the rest of Dawn of X and just almost feel like it's in its own universe. And again, this would have made my list for sure, because Ben Percy keep writing Wolverine forever. Because I mean, I really liked like Kubert's drawing of it. He drew it for a really long time. He still is doing it all. Like he's the first one that came back, him and along with Bogdanovic. But yeah, Bogdanovic and Percy keep doing this forever for sure. Okay, so that is the last of the main list. Now, before we get into the ones that we all we agreed multiple. Oh, I can't even talk anymore. But my guilty pleasure book. All right, so we had one last month. Last month it was Excalibur. I want because I do like Otherworld. It's I'm gonna follow Gambit around like a lost puppy because that's how I roll. And I suspended it because it was the book that actually was going somewhere.
Yeah, I liked last month
from the beginning to go somewhere, and whether we like X of Swords or not. I feel like a lot of the other books were very meandering or disappointing or whatever. But this month it is another mutant book. But the reason it's my guilty pleasure book is because I don't pick it up anymore. But I want to again, just for one simple guilty pleasure. And that's because, and it was New Mutants number 13.
Dude, it was very good. That issue was very good, man. I loved it.
And yeah, again, sorry, there's the Colossus Ross. But the reason I came back to it was because I love Warlock. I was heartbroken in the late 80s when Warlock was killed in the Extinction Agenda. I really, really like that character. I know he's goofy. I know he's, whatever. But I've always dug him. I liked his relationship with Cypher. He made Cypher interesting. In the end, it was what kind of killed Cypher, right? Way back in the day. But the return of this character and being the sword and everything, I just really, really dug it, even though most people have checked out on it, including myself. But Rod Reese is back, and I met him, and he was such a nice guy.
That guy I've heard he's an angel. I've heard he's just the nicest dude.
Like when I went to the C2E2, they had the regular panel of the Dawn of X guys. And then in the next row over, hidden, was Rod Reese and New Mutant. And I was just like, what are you talking about? Because I really dig his art a lot. It was the highlight of the relaunch of New Mutants to me. Some people don't like it. I happen to really like it.
I like it.
And
you know what I love?
Warlock, even though I know this isn't the Return of Warlock, being this really heavy, where he becomes Cypher's sword, and how he really cares, and it's still the same guy from way back in the day. Like they really got the character right to me, and that's why it's my guilty pleasure book. I won't apologize for liking this issue because Warlock is back. And he's a sword.
But I'll tell you what, though, it was written so well because, all the other books in Ten of Swords, they're just about everybody getting their swords. But since Doug already had his, this was about something different. It was about Doug finding courage inside of him and coming face to face with the fact that he's probably going to die. But he still had the courage to step out in front of right in that circle of 10 with all of them. And that was cool because it was a different change of pace from all these people. Hey, I've got a journey to blank place to go find a sword. This was about Doug's inner journey. So it was written really well. I'm telling you, Brisson did really well on his last issue. I didn't like all of them in the past, but that last one was good.
Well, the book was, they kept switching back and forth with writers and artists. It didn't do it any favors.
That's right.
But yeah, I think that what you're talking about for Cypher is one of the best parts of it's definitely the heart of the book. And not to keep talking about X of Swords, but I think that Cypher will probably be fine.
I hope so.
The character I think that we could all hope might go, and the one that I am hoping goes in this storyline that will never exist anywhere else, and it will break some of the characters' hearts. It'll mean something to them, but it won't mean as much to us. And then when they resurrect them, maybe they'll make the right choice. Is that Kid Cable?
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. That's funny.
If we could lose Kid Cable in this fight, because honestly, I don't know what they're doing with him. I don't want to get negative, because if we could get Cable back, this would be the way to do it.
I know, I get that so much, but dude, it seems like Betsy's going to be the one to go, man. And I hate to say it, but yeah, I feel like she got a really bad card.
Yeah, it's not a card.
Yeah, so I don't know.
But they said like they don't always mean what you think, so
exactly. Yep.
But yeah, let's move on to the books that we like we agreed multiply. Why I can't say those words. Still can't say those words. More than one of us agreed on. There. I took a whole sentence. So the first one that we agreed on was Venom. Number 29, Donny Cates, Stegman variant. I'm just full of variants, and I'm such a hypocrite. But Venom number 29, again, Venom has just been a solid book for a while.
Mm-hmm.
It was when I was first getting back into comics, I was so happy where it picked up. And it was right before Cates took over. And going back and reading Sandoval stuff and Remender stuff and all this, Venom has just become one of my favorite characters of the last 4 or 5 years. And Cates just keeps killing it with Eddie Brock and Dylan.
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe I care about Dylan Brock. And Venom Beyond is a great story.
I dig it.
This was one of yours, Chase's. So why don't you talk about this, and then we'll.
Yeah, I mean, there's actually so much to say about this entire series, just because I didn't care about Venom even a tiny bit at all whatsoever until reading Cates's run. The character literally meant nothing to me, and I'm a Venom fan. I mean, straight up. But and I might even go back and read some past stuff. It's just the relationship things in this book. So I like character-driven dramas and character-driven sci-fi, character-driven stories in general. Whenever it revolves around a huge emotion between individuals that matters, that's when the stakes are high for me. And this story is just, it pushes that incredibly far. You know, if I was to go back to, an alternate dimension or whatever, and I came face to face with the girl that I lost, that I was in love with years ago, and we were, I mean, that would be amazing, first of all, but just us being side by side and me seeing her, and then her literally tell me that she's angry at me because I killed myself in the timeline that they were in. What a freaking incredible story. I'm just telling you, this was so I binge read all of Venom, and it took me like 2 days, and well, I'm hooked now. I'm hooked, and I won't stop reading this book, where at some point I probably would eventually drop off of Thor, just because my pull list is a little bit too big right now, and I it just is what it is. But yeah, character driven. That's what did it for me. And I care about every single character in this. And I really loved the moment between, I don't even remember her name, Anne, or female Venom. Yeah, Annie. Yeah, her and Peter Parker, the other version of Peter Parker. It was such a shout back to the original, like, first 5 issues of this. And he was like, or the Absolute Carnage event, and he was like, I hate symbiote stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my favorite part right there. I hate
This-
symbiote stuff.
This definitely had me feeling to something very similar to a book we're going to talk about later on. Is Parker and his relationships with other characters,
Mhm.
and what a great touchstone character he always is.
Mhm.
And Cates writes him just about as well, I would say, as Zdarsky does.
Agree.
And whenever you need a character to have a great moment, it's so great to have Peter Parker to
Yep.
bounce great stuff off of.
Yeah.
And she, there's also a great moment in here between Dylan and her, because the Dylan in this universe went bad. Just like Eddie's conflicted about seeing her, Dylan doesn't have a mom anymore. She's gone in their world, So like, as much as this is like an It's a Wonderful Life for Eddie Brock, seeing what the world would be like without him, Dylan is got to see the other thing of like, this is what it would be like if my mom was still around and my dad wasn't, and her being afraid of him because of what he turned out to be like in their world when she was just by herself, and him like just looking at her like she's yelling at him, "I'm not your Annie, you're not my Eddie," and the kid's just like sitting there like, "I'm in the room too."
Yeah.
And like, I'm not a baby, I'm not him, the other one. I know I'm not your son. I know I don't have a mom, and that's okay. But please don't be afraid of me. And it's just like heartbreaking because she realized,
Absolutely.
like it was so sad in the middle of all this insanity that's going on.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that we got this great story about how their Dylan went bad after Eddie Brock killed himself, and the possibilities of like what you could see this Dylan going through, like the kind of what if the same fate finds this kid. And then we also have just like the fun stuff with the group that she's got together with Carnage and Parker and Wade Wilson, and like these characters that would never ever 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 be a team, especially when you see Carnage in the mix.
That's super interesting, all of that.
And then you got Scorpion all of a sudden, like this is the guy who was Virus after the whole events of Absolute Carnage, the backlash of that, of Eddie Brock leaving him there, throwing him to the wolves, and this was him trying to get revenge for that. Like, you just left me to die, and the repercussions of that's following them to this other world, and having this great moment of like, I'm sorry, like literally apologizing, like it's not fair, and no, it's not. Like, I'm not that person. Let's, like it again, Cates is doing something fantastic. And for people, like you said, you weren't even a fan of Venom.
Yeah.
And it's just, I'm afraid of what's going to happen when Cates leaves this book.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Same with some other great writers. I get that for sure. I feel the same way.
But yeah, just no, fantastic. It's on a lot of people's, like it sells out so fast. It sells out so fast. But we need to get moving a little bit, and let's talk about Skip's book that was also on your list, I believe, as well, and that's Decorum by Jonathan Hickman, number 5. Now I'm going to let you guys talk about this mostly because here's my problem. I understand what's going on in Hickman's X-Men. I understood what was going on in East of West. I kind of know some of what's going on in here. Other parts, I have no idea what's going on. And part of me is going, is this what he was trying to do in Dawn of X? Plus, the only other thing I have is, I'll bring it up later, is a little weird thing that seems to be in both X of Swords Stasis and characters in this. I'll let you guys talk about this book, and then I'll chime in later.
Chase, you want to go first?
Go for it, man. Go for it.
Okay, sounds good. this is one of my favorite parts about this book is that it is challenging. Mm-hmm. It's a challenging read. For someone like me, maybe I can partially speak for Chase as well, who is also a writer. Like I want to be challenged, not all the time. Like sometimes I do want like firepower. I just breeze through and just feel good. It was like a good breath of fresh air. But this one is one where I really have to keep my brain on. I may have to double back to pages. I take notes actually when I read Decorum because of how dense it is, and there's multiple storylines going on across different things, which is not new for Hickman. Some of these things he's been doing since the Nightly News, which was his first public work on Image years ago. Yeah. But where we're at now, what I did appreciate about this one is I think this had some of the least, as far as like the kind of more esoteric kind of like future thing going on with the egg, which is basically going to be the Messiah, from what we've gathered so far, is supposed to be birthed through it. It had, I think it was as meaningful, but equally not as active or not as much going on with that part. So basically I pretty much just took that as, the people that are trying to bring the Messiah in proper, the sisterhood, they're just like scarcity will give us a better chance. So they went from having, I think there was like 3 of them left after that down to 1. And they kind of put all of their essence into like basically one egg, one person. And then they left one sister left. And then she took it on and she basically just allowed herself to kind of evolve into, from what I gather, the best, almost like the most fertile soil that this seed could be planted and grow out of, this Messiah, to the universe. And then more on the personal side, where we had Neha, who was obviously the person who we're kind of following. Her family is frozen, and she's kind of paying their mortgage as they're frozen, but more or less, right?
Yeah.
She's paying for that service, but through circumstance, she comes into Madame Morley, who's that assassin, and she kind of sees potential in her, takes her under her wing. And this issue is cool because we see a progression. And Neha, she's reluctant. She's not a great candidate, but Madame Morley just won't give up on what she sees the potential inside of her. And Neha's just like, if this can give me money to finally get my family out of the freezer, then I'm gonna put my best foot forward. So that's what I really appreciate about this. We finally see Neha go through assassin school struggle, but start to kind of figure it out. And she finally, after 3, different contracts where she failed to get a kill, she found an opportunity to get a kill. And it just so happened to loop right back around to our introduction to her in the very first issue. So that's what I really appreciated about this issue.
Yeah. So I'm a weird guy, and I'm just going to start out like that. Let me take off my necklace here real quick. So,
sure.
So I'm going to read what my necklace says to you. Okay. Mm-hmm. Whole body donor, if dead, cool with ice, especially head. Do not embalm or autopsy. See reverse reward. Uniform Anatomical Gift Act, whole body donor to Cryonics Institute. And then it has a bunch of phone numbers with a reward on there. And then the phone number for suspended animation, which is a service that I pay for. If my body was to die, they would rush a helicopter out to me immediately from Michigan, pick my body up, and then freeze it in cryonic suspension. So there aren't very many of us. We're a very small percentage of the population. And, that's one of the things I love about this book and about X-Men, because I'm basically an immortalist is what I like to say, or just a life extensionist. I want to live as long as possible. And, there's people alive today that believe that we can extend our lives probably 300 years in our own lifespan. So it may happen, may not. It's all technology based. And so this book appeals to me, just like anything about that appeals to me. But what I loved about this one so much was the character development and what happened to Neha when she overcame that, because during her training, she couldn't kill, and that's her job. She's decided to be a killer, and she couldn't do it until it was someone that she had that bloodlust for. And in that moment, I was like, I get it. I understand, because I'm human. I understand revenge, and that's what it would take for me. I would just be able to hire, I would have to lose my mind and over hatred. That's the only way that could ever happen for me. I wouldn't be able to just cold-blooded pull a trigger like a Bubba Fett or something. So yeah, I just love how it developed Neha's character a lot. That's what I loved about this issue. But Decorum's freaking amazing. It's probably my second favorite book right now, right after Something's Killing the Children. Nice.
Yeah, I do dig this book. I really do. I did. I'm glad you guys explained some of this stuff, because the esoteric and the Messiah stuff I was not understanding really. This is like one of the most straightforward. This is probably the most straightforward issue.
That
they've done. And I do really, really like this issue. It's probably my favorite because of that. And like, I love being challenged, but sometimes it's one of those books that I would need to like practically seal myself into a room with no sound, like just completely make myself sit there till I understand everything that's going on.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Also, Chase, we need to talk about this whole immortal thing, because how do I get involved with that?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different organizations, but, one of my favorite writers, his name's Ray Kurzweil, and he wrote a book called The Singularity is Near, and he talks about all of the technological advancements that he believes are going to come to pass. And the biggest one is just freaking incredible. He believes in about 4 years from now, we will have completely mapped out the human brain, and that we'll be able to create a vessel very similar to a brain and begin transferring information to and from our own minds. And that, the whole idea comes into, what is consciousness? Is that in the memory, or is it something else? And would you be able to transfer that? It's pretty wild. But I've also archived my DNA, and I have that on file there at the Cryonics Institute, just in case something happens. I've also written my life story out, like every emotional thing that's ever happened to me. So I'll have a record of my history. Pretty crazy.
No, man, that's I don't want this to go off the rails into this side.
Of course.
Time on this conversation. We'll have to talk on another separately, privately about this one, because there's like a running gag on my channel about me trying to put my brain in a robot body.
Me too. Let's do it.
I want to live as long as possible.
Fantastic.
I could be that person watching the last star go out. That would be me.
Yep. Well, me and you will be hanging out with whoever else wants to join us.
But there is an X-Men stasis, right? All right. There's these two characters that show up, part of this like otherworld council thing that they've got going on. And there's these two creatures that are the unnamed representatives of the province recently renamed Mercator.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not saying anything, and they just say, if you don't have anything to say next Parliament, stay home. And tell Mr. Mercator he would do well to hurry up and get his province ready for company. The longer he takes to invite me, the more friends I bring with me when I visit. But their design is really interesting to me. Where I gotta get them in there. They're at the top, and they're at the bottom here, right here. They look suspiciously like a couple of the characters that are in the more problematic storyline in Decorum.
In Decorum, okay. Yeah, I see a lot of parallels, honestly, between it. And I say a lot of parallels. Of course, it's nothing like the storyline, but there are similarities that are extremely striking. But I mean, if you've read Transhuman by Hickman just has so many themes that he continues to. He's really all about theme. Yeah, he really does. I think he is a post-humanist like myself, which means believes that we will get to a place to where we'll be able to either extend our lives indefinitely or I think he may be an immortalist. I don't know.
I
He
mean,
has so many
the fact
themes.
that we have Dr. Devo, like Killian Devo,
Uh-huh.
like one of the first things I got introduced in X-Men #1 and the whole posthumanist thing, like it's obvious that's an interest of his. It's very apparent for sure.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
his book Transhuman was really good. If y'all haven't checked it out, I just finished with it a while back, and I don't understand it completely, so I'm gonna have to read it again because it's Hickman.
Excellent. So the next book that several of us agreed on was Something is Killing the Children, number 11. This series is freaking amazing. For me, these people feel so real as far as the writing goes. I feel like these people are people that I could see anywhere in my town, could hear the discussion sound just like this. The writing is so authentic. That is the thing that pulls me into this story. You know, and just on top of it, it's a crazy story about monsters killing and eating children, and the fact that, again, this also kind of gives me Buffy feels, because you got this like secret order of people that are kind of like the Watchers Council that doesn't want people to know about these things, and they'll do anything to protect these secrets, even to the point of like just letting whole areas just go, covering this all up. With the demon, you know, these creatures and the dolls that they've got. I just love every bit of this. And then you've got this great main character and Erica Slaughter, who I just love. And all the side characters, they all feel, it sounds like Twin Peaksy to me.
Yeah, it does.
Just quirky enough, just real enough. But this was on, I don't know if this was on all of our lists or not, but Chase, why don't you talk about why you like this book?
So today's book, last week's book, 2 weeks ago, or I don't know what day it is, but it had just enough slow reveals. So the whole series, in my opinion, the way that Tynan is writing this, it seems completely plausible that he planned this out from the start. And you know, I haven't always felt that way about his writing, specifically the way that he wrote the Bat Family, you know, before his run on Batman here. I feel like he planned this series out because every single issue, and almost said episode, because it really does feel like I know these people, just like you said. There's one small reveal that happens every time, and it always kind of, it's not always emotional, but it always shows you so much more of what's happening in the world, and it happens at the very end usually, and it makes you need to read the other comic book. Like I said, it's my favorite series, and it's because of the way that he is slowly revealing everything. And I loved, you know, this issue, we found out that there are actually 2 different factions within these people. One of them's white and one's black, and it's just because of the masks they wear on their face. And it definitely means that they have different, well, jobs or roles. And it looks like I don't know completely. I could make a bunch of guesses, but I just love the way that things are unfolding, a tiny bit at a time, sharing more about the world with us. And it's a character drama with a horror story that is absolutely one of the most frightening ideas that you've ever seen, because nobody can see these monsters. And it looks like when they're, you know, picking someone up, that people are like flying through the sky and they're eating people. They're just decimating them. But kids can. Kids can see them, and then some adults can. And I don't know why. I think, is it because they get touched by them, or is it blood? I don't know why. Some people are able to see them and some aren't.
Yeah, it's kind of a mystery.
Yeah, I guess we don't know yet. That's cool, and we'll probably find that out eventually. But
it makes me think of like the way that nobody can see it. I have that vision of Nightmare on Elm Street. Of the girl getting flailed around. You know, something's happening to her, but nobody can see it. We see all the damage being done, but we just can't see the force that's doing it to her. And that's just creepy as hell, because something's there. Something's doing it, and to reveal what it is, this such real characters having something completely unreal happening to them, and how they deal with it, and it feels authentic the way people deal with things.
Yeah, for sure.
They can't explain, even as
it's very human.
It is.
Yeah. So I bought 2 different masks so far for COVID that I wear everywhere, that are the factions, those teeth or whatever. And I wear those a lot. I don't wear them to work because, I work in kind of a straight-laced kind of job, but I wear them everywhere else. And I look like one of the mystical monster hunters from the series. Pretty cool.
Yeah, Tinian was selling those at the C2E2, and I really am kicking myself for not grabbing one.
I bet.
I was there, because I was like, oh, that's cool. Like the book had just came out, and I was like saving my money for special things at the time, and now I'm like,
there's a couple places.
I didn't know how bad COVID was gonna be.
Yeah, there's a couple places you can get them online though. If you want, I can forward you to that link.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. We are definitely got to move along, unfortunately. So the next book we're talking about is Stillwater by Chip Zdarsky, Raymond K. Perez, and Mike Spicer. I know that this is on my list. Was this on yours too, Chase?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's not surprising because it's Zdarsky.
Yeah.
And usually, like I've said in other books, like with we only find them when they're dead, or other. There was another book that we were talking about where I needed Department of Truth, that I needed a little bit more before I could put it on my list. But this I don't need anymore to put this on the list, because this is just, again, great. It's like a Stephen King kind of story to me, like the Stephen King town. Reminds me of an episode of Fringe that dealt with a secretive town of people that had suspicious birth certificates. Nobody knew what the real age of anybody was in this town, and the lengths that they'll go to keep the secret. And that's what we get here. And we also get like good flashbacks. The thing that's really got me questioning is the actual first 2 pages that's set in 1990 with Galen and Tommy, and this like situation with the wolf in the front yard. And I just want to know who those characters are, because wasn't Tommy the character who got killed at the end of the first issue?
Well, this is going to sound horrible, but I don't remember the intro. Here, let me crack it open real quick. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. From when he was a kid, you mean?
Yeah, because his name is, because the main character's name is Daniel.
Oh.
And I thought Tommy was the one that they killed.
Oh, I don't have my other one. I don't have my Stillwater.
Well, anyway, that's something we can cover at another time.
Yeah.
Basically, if you live in this town, you don't die. And unless you're taken outside of city limits, then anything can happen to you. And what these people are like, if you think that Krakoa's got no, problems, like the resurrection protocols mean death means nothing. Well, in reality, when death means nothing and you can't get any older, but you've got these people that have been alive for a long time stuck in child bodies, things like that. I mean, we haven't gotten far enough along to see if the children age to a certain extent at all.
God, I would sure hope so. That'd be weird.
Because they really were just like, because you got this kid, right, who's causing problems, who knows he was causing problems.
Yeah.
And the why behind it, we don't know. And I was like, man, well, what if this kid's not really a kid, man? What if this kid's like, 80 years old?
Oh, man, that would piss me off. It'd be like what is that little girl vampire from Interview with the Vampire or whatever,
Oh yeah,
Claudia or whatever. Yeah.
And again, Zdarsky's writing so realistic. Getting the explanation from the mother about what she's doing and how they handle the situation there, and his whole interview with the guy in charge, and basically his decision to whether to kill him or let him live, and if he lets him live, what are the consequences that still have to happen, and what happens to his mother is pretty crazy, not unexpected, but pretty dark. And just kind of showing this mentality. It's small town. Like because of where I live in a very small town, very close knit. This hits me very hard because, it's creepy. It's just really, really creepy how people can get together and have this kind of, group mentality. But what's special about this for you this month?
The very last scene really just punched me in the face, and it was the very last part. They're burying somebody. I'm not going to say exactly who it was in case people are wanting to still read this and haven't yet. And it was an important character, and putting the dirt over this person's face. And the very last page, it just shows a couple of specks of light coming out from the dirt, and it just says, "Welcome to Stillwater." and so that's messed up, because she can't die, and they're just going to bury her alive and watch her, go through this horrible process of feeling like she's dying and suffocating over and over and over again. What a horrible punishment. But this whole series so far, it's only 2 books, but it feels like we've had 5 books already because of the character development. Zdarsky is a master at creating emotion between individuals, but individuals who haven't even had a correspondence with each other yet, right? Because there's a character, there's the mom and the son. These people haven't even talked, and you can feel the emotional tension between them because of the circumstances and the way that he wrote them. And that is just, I'm telling you, and I'll say this, people may say, oh, it's not okay to, rate some people better than others. Dude, I feel like Zdarsky is the superstar at Marvel, and he is better than Cates. And I just hope that he gets the recognition that he deserves. So that's how I feel about that dude.
Yeah,
he's legit.
Absolutely. And my favorite part, one of my favorite parts of this book is when he's sitting there having this discussion about, like, we don't need lawyers. We don't need, we deal with things ourselves internally, and the guy is sitting there just trying to figure out what's going on while this guy is trying to break down their society to him. And he's like, we're sitting here whether or not to kill you. And he's like, do you know why that is? And he's just like, because you're a bunch of blades.
Yeah, that was fun.
He go into this whole thing about like how, the Blade, Wesley Snipes, 1998. It's all I could think of. Last night I just laid in the cell, just crying, Tony, dead, a nightmare. Then I woke up and I was still in the cell, and I was like, well, I was probably next. And all I could think of was Blade, this town full of vampires who could walk around during the day.
Yeah.
I just love that.
Yeah.
That's like Tarantino. That is some Tarantino level stuff right there, man.
Yeah, I agree.
and that's just issue 2.
Yeah.
And Zdarsky is the rock star to me over at Marvel. He's the best writer over there. Cates is.
Yeah, I'm glad you agree.
Up there too.
Yeah.
And speaking of Cates, then as we get to our second to the last book, we got to talk about. We're making a special because this isn't actually from October. This is from November. We're talking about crossover from Donny Cates, Jeff Shaw, Dee Cunniffe, and John J. Hill. This is a crazy book. And I don't remember who. I know this is on Chase's. Is this on yours, Stu Skip?
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't you lead us off with crossover? This is a lot.
I actually haven't read it yet.
Oh, so then it's on mine and Skip's. Okay.
Yeah. Well, all right. So technically, what were you saying?
Hmm?
So technically, I didn't add it to the list.
Oh.
But I have read it. So I could talk about it a little bit. It like, in all honesty, it didn't have like a big impact on me, but there were some things about it that I did appreciate. Probably the biggest thing that I liked was the scene that happened in the comic book store, because of the nature of the world and the event that has happened and everything and how it's affected everyone. And that comic book store, you know, even I think it even had the title of like last comic book store, like in that area or whatever, which was pretty funny. But I just appreciated that it happened there. The conversation between the guy that was trying to sell, the issues of those comic books, and then the really pretentious like comic book store owner dude, because that's a thing. I'm happy that I don't run into that very often. Like the two comic shops that I go to, the service is great and the people are really cool and really open-minded, but it was funny to see that trope being in there. And but what I did like about that particular part is there's a quote at the beginning of the book that I will read. That I'm honest, I don't know how I feel about, but I'm still glad that Donny Cates put it in there. It says, the world of the comic book is the world of the strong, the ruthless, the bluffer, the shrewd deceiver, the torturer, and the thief. In comic books, life is worth nothing. There is no dignity of a human being. Frederick Worthen, from The Seduction of the Innocent. So oddly enough, the pretentious, like, to me, that's a bit of a pretentious quote, but I still appreciate the quote. To me, it was funny that clerk that was at the comic book store was so pretentious and he had a Wortham shirt on, you know, as he was kind of like being a jerk to that person. And then the lead character had to like tell him like, hey, you got to stop being a jerk to the customers. You know what I mean? So I thought that was pretty funny. But what about you?
And like what you say at the beginning of the book, I was really touched by the end of the book, what Donny Cates wrote himself about why he's doing this book and about how he almost died 6 years ago. And that for the first time in his life, I truly thought I wasn't going to make it out of there alive. And when I finally did, I had a lot to say about the nature of death and family and legacy. And that all came out in God Country. And then he said, until recently, I almost died again. And for a brief period there, I thought I wouldn't make it out again. Except this time when I got back on my feet, it was different. I didn't want to talk about death anymore. I wasn't consumed with those notions of eternal darkness that have peppered so much of my work these last few years. This time I awoke wanting to talk about the things I loved, the things that made my life worth living. I wanted to talk about comics. And that's why I was ready to talk about this, because it kind of just fits like what I'm talking about here with this show. Is let's just talk about, you know, like what we love about this thing that is a big chunk of our lives, and that let's not worry about all the, you know, well, we need to like reasonably still worry about things, but like when we're given the opportunity, let's talk about the positive. And I loved that. So, you know, I don't presume that Donny Cates will ever see this video, but I like to think that that's kind of an inspiration, because there's a lot of difficult stuff in here. There's a lot of just real life kind of stuff that's, you know, you don't really want to see happen in this world. It's a real dark story. And I mean, it's a great jumping off point. You know, you don't see any famous characters in here. You know, they mentioned Superman, you know, the quote at the front after what you read, you know, just says, kids love chains, Todd McFarlane. And I remember that. And that's the thing, is what's messed up is I remember that quote more than I would remember the one above it. And that's kind of messed up.
but you know, to your point, and to Donnie's point and his inspiration of making this book, those are like the two sides. Like, I understand, though I may not fully know how I feel wholly about that Wortham comment. Like, he's making a point about how there's things within comics that have been abused, which is like the darkness of it and death, and how like people don't feel like that has much value these days anymore in comics. And then you flip to the whole opposite of such a heavy topic, Todd McFarlane and his infinite comic book wisdom, being like, someone asking him like, why so many chains? And he's just like, kids like chains. It's just like, yeah, we do. It looks cool. It's simple. You could say it's a simpleton thing. You could say it's juvenile even, but it doesn't negate the truth of the statement. We love chains. It looks cool.
It's legit.
Yeah.
And so that, since actually I was the only one that had this on my list then for real, I won't say anymore, but let's just say that in this book, Over Colorado in 2017, every comic book character that ever existed popped up and was having a nonstop brawl above the city, in the city. And to the point where Colorado had to be domed off. Yeah. And
yeah, I'm definitely going to get
now, nobody can get in or out of there. If somebody actually gets out, it's a huge no-no. And, being a comic book into comic books now is really back to being taboo, or not just taboo, but like the way it was, for a lot of us growing up, comic book nerds, you were not like treated like regular people.
Right.
And now it's been, popularized. And I've kind of said, to myself sometimes that I wish it would just go back to being a nerd thing. But
because of the movies kind of throw it off.
Yep.
That's how I feel about it. Just the movies.
Can't put the genie back in the bottle this time. And but it deals with that kind of talk, and then it goes into the like people trying to separate and distinctions, like the very religious don't like this, and people are being ostracized, and it's a lot. I'm not going to go into all of it here because I guess the only one who had it on the list, but it's something to look forward to. And I really kind of just wanted to mostly mention what Kate said at the end of it about why he made that book, and it really inspired me. I wanted to talk about it because of this show. So I felt like it was an important thing to bring up, even as controversial as the book could be. And so we've made it to the end. One book left. And of course, for me, it is a no-brainer to get to this point. It's Daredevil, number 23, by Chip Zdarsky, Marco Cicchetto, and Menez. And to me, it is still the best book out there.
Yeah, it's so good.
On Chase's list.
Yeah.
This book hit me everywhere. I got the chills reading this book, but in a good way. What about you, Chase?
Like I said, he's in my opinion, he is the best writer at Marvel right now. And I can't say in all of comics, but man, maybe I'm getting to that point. He really is that good. It's not just the way he writes Spider-Man that I think is perfect. It's the way he writes humans that I think is perfect. And it takes someone who's been through some stuff, in my opinion, to really write like that. So it only just makes me wonder about him, about his life. I know nothing about the guy. I follow him on Twitter. I love his fun comments. He's a little bit of a comedian in real life, but he writes drama perfectly and in comics. That I never really thought much about the relationship between Daredevil and Spider-Man, but there you have it. That was the perfect issue. I honestly haven't read a single issue comic that has been more emotionally and character driven, and it appeals to everyone. This is the kind of book, it reminds me of, he wrote this one, his last issue that he ever wrote of the Amazing Spider-Man run. It reminds me of that one. It was so good. This is one of the best books out there. And this one single issue is one of the best books I've read, period, like ever. So yeah. Really good.
Yeah, his that was like Spectacular Spider-Man number 311, I think, or something like that.
It was 311. You're absolutely correct. The one that he drew.
He wrote and drew it.
Yes, that's right.
It was such a fantastic send-off for what he did. Like, they really let him do something special. And this book, this whole series has just been the most fantastic book I've read in the last few years. Every issue for me is a home run. And you don't get, like, what's so great is because of, he writes so good for humans, and one of the most human superheroes out there is Daredevil.
Mm-hmm.
He's so freaking complicated, and he, I don't really belong to any kind of, I don't really have a belief system, but he does.
Mm-hmm.
And normally, and for some reason, I'm still really drawn to that kind of character.
Mm-hmm.
I love studying that kind of complexity of being able to beat the hell out of people and still have this like deep faith that he has. And it's just fascinating to me. And Zdarsky taps into that so well. And all the people around him, there's not a weak link in this book for any character that comes in. And even just, bringing back this character of Kirsten McDuffie, who I'm not really familiar with. I care now because they care. Yeah. It's important to them. It's having weight on them. And I feel that weight immediately. And it's, him just dealing with the possibility, the strong possibility that he's going away, and just trying to tie up some loose ends. You get this great moment with Elektra that explains, what they were doing with what she did with the billions of dollars that they took from the Stromwinds. It's a great moment for her and him. And, it's kind of like saying his last goodbyes a little bit, setting up the future of Hell's Kitchen without him being there. And, you got this great moment with Wilson Fisk. Again, one of the, he's the co-star of this book, this whole series, right? Him and Daredevil and Cole North have been this trifecta throughout this run. And Kingpin now setting things right in his mind of the way that things have to be run, because I obviously couldn't leave you guys in charge of things. And what he does to Hammerhead made me think of Daredevil season 1 on Netflix with that guy's head in the car door, where I was just like, oh yeah, he is back. He is not messing around. The Stromwinds might have thrown him out a window, but now he's back.
Yeah, that was pretty legit.
And, parceling out power again. And then right at that perfect moment, and it's happened before in the past, right? We've seen Daredevil face off with Kingpin before. It's throughout history of the book. But this one just felt special because, he's just at that perfect moment of, I'm setting things right in this, and boom comes Daredevil. Just standing there. Old Kingpin, new Kingpin, I'll topple them all. And just standing there, not fully, lit up, partially dark, and just setting things straight with him, I'm going to make your lives hell. And, standing there, and there's Spider-Man in the corner, him partially covered in darkness. And just Kingpin's got another moment taken away from him by the man who will always be there over his shoulder to stop him, to put him in check however he can. And then we get this moment that we talked about between him and Spider-Man that gave me the chills all over, of just how perfect he knows how to write comic books.
Yeah.
And again,
it was beautiful.
We were talking about in Venom, how Peter Parker is this great character to bounce stuff off of. And it just made me think of his run on Spectacular Spider-Man. And now you've got these two worlds meeting, and them just having this heart-to-heart about, Spider-Man came to him you've got to end this. You've got to face the facts. But then him pointing out, I did my own thing. I was mad at you. I saw myself. I saw my own sins reflected in what you did, and I took it out on you. And it's just they embrace. And I just even looking at it now, as they pull back and show them just on a rooftop, two guys hugging it out. And it doesn't feel weird. It feels so earned and honest.
It was the best bro moment that I've ever seen in a comic book in years, dude. I mean, legit, best bro moment.
It was like House of X, number 4,
Nightcrawler and Wolverine. Nightcrawler. Yeah, dude. Thank you. Absolutely, it was that good. You're right.
Yep. And it just, again, Tip Top and Matt Murdock showing up at the end, which explains the Daredevil annual that was out a few months ago or a month or so ago of what was going to happen with that character, all that whole annual setting up this. Yeah. And again, it's just Chip Zdarsky.
Yeah, he's that good. And if I had any book to recommend to anybody first starting out in comics, I would say pick up Zdarsky's Daredevil and just keep reading it. But I'm telling you, anybody who has any kind of faith, who loves God, this is the book. This is the book to read, in my opinion, just because Zdarsky, and I know Zdarsky is agnostic, but dude, he writes this so well. Matt and his faith in God, it's wild. At times I was like looking at this and I was like, man, I need to give this to my Christian friends. Like literally, like it's that good, man. It's really good.
All right. Well, that almost comes to an end. We have one special last surprise, and that is Skip is going to tell us his guilty pleasure book. I thought I was the only one who had one. That's why I kind of snuck it in there in the middle. And so, no, I'm happy to talk about another guilty pleasure book. I'm glad somebody else has something that they read that maybe others don't. So, Skip, I really want to know now. What is your guilty pleasure book?
It's I guess I put it under the like I don't feel guilty to read it, so to speak, but I know it's more just like a term for these books that are kind of way farther off on the trail. It's a book by Dan Waters. The artist is Danny, and a buddy of mine named Brad Simpson colors it, and it's called Coffin Bound. And it's a really kind of interesting book here. I'm trying not to lose my page on it. Where I feel like sometimes we come across, the comic book writers that we can tell were very inspired by a particular writer. Of course, Alan Moore is one of those ones. So often we come across writers and it's like, okay, we can see that you're trying to do your best Alan Moore impression. This book, very much, as soon as you get in, you get like a dialogue. There is very much a world that's built, and a lot of it is built off of prose. The art takes a back seat to it. A lot of things are just kind of like impressionistic or implied because they really want you to focus on the dialogue. So the way that the story starts off and kind of where it goes, dystopian, future, of course, world or whatever. But a lot of the characters and like the antagonists of stuff, it almost feels in a way like with more seriousness and less goofiness, but almost kind of like the Romeo and Juliet that came out like in the 90s with
DiCaprio and
yeah.
Why I can't remember her name.
Yeah, but we see her face. But yes, with DiCaprio, it almost it's almost verbose in that way, but the world is super grimy. So it's like these people are talking all like hoity-toity, but like they look like scumbags and lowlifes and like the scourge or whatever. So it's a very different book, and I appreciate it for that. I just wanted to share one particular part in there with you guys, and I'll show you a little bit of the art so you can kind of see and get an idea of what it's like. But there's this lady, you first get introduced to her in issue number 1, and she's a dancer. She's like an exotic dancer. But the thing about this world is like it's so depraved and kind of broken that people go and pay her to dance. But as she dances, eventually, after she takes her clothes off, she starts taking off her skin. And then those people, they basically start weeping and they cry, and then they like hand her the money. Everybody's so emotionally broken that just feeling anything, even genuine pain for them, they appreciate and they will pay for that service. So she comes back around, and one of the people that she was friends with has passed away, and the police department had called her, and they knew that she was a photographer. They called her to like take some pictures. And so she goes, she takes the pictures, and it turns out to be her friend. And the cop is a total jerk. Like the police department is like, everybody's corrupt, but they're like very, very corrupt. So the guy's kind of pushing in her face, like, you gonna take the pictures or not? You know, like, it's your friend. Like, why aren't you mourning her? And throughout the whole book, she just keeps talking about there's no sense in mourning. So she gets to that point, and she's saying, this is why I became a photographer too. Photography is not an art of beauty. It is an art of pain. The photograph is a stolen moment. It is already past by the time we see it. What stirs us is in that pain of what stirs us is it is in the pain of what has already been lost. Knowing where that might lie in order to capture it is the true art of photography, of the photograph. So it was just like, it's stuff like that. And then it like continues on. And then the whole thing, she's just mourning. It almost reminds me a bit, again, going back to Alan Moore, of that issue in Saga of the Swamp Thing where Swamp Thing was lamenting Arcane. And he just kept going over and over and over again. It was like this motif, and it was a very similar thing, but it didn't feel like, I didn't make that connection to way later, and it doesn't feel like it pulled it right out of there. And as someone who is a videographer and I take a lot of photographs too, I just thought it was so interesting how we're always usually so focused on the beauty and how pretty a picture can be, that sometimes the reality of the fact that the moment is past kind of goes, like, we don't think of that as much, like, oh, look how happy these people are. No, how happy they were. Right now they could be weeping in their room all alone in their darkest moment, and we don't make that connection. And so that just really stood out to me. So I really, if people, obviously I know Chase is a writer and he's talking about being into the words. It's a little book. I haven't heard many people, if it wasn't for Brad working on it, I might not even know about the book, but I'm so happy that he would always post it. And finally I just grabbed it, and wow, it really blew me away. Dan Waters is doing something completely different. So check out Coffin Bound.
Awesome. Definitely. Yeah. It's not yet like a book off center. And I think I might at my comic book shop. So now it'll give me a reason to pick up another book that's off center for me. And hopefully I like it. It sounds awesome.
Yeah, I hope so.
And that's it, man. We have reached the end. I realize we talked a long time. For those of you who power through this or pick it, watch it in chunks or however you want to consume it, I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed talking about all these books this month. I want to thank both Skip and Tosh and Gateway into Comics for being here this month. Hopefully you guys will want to be back for other ones. We'll figure out, hopefully to do it live. And not to keep anybody any longer, because this was just great. I thank you guys so much. I love talking comics. I hope you guys enjoy talking comics with me.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, it's just a blast to be able to just talk about stuff, and it feels good. I feel real good after these conversations, and I hope that that's something that you guys get out of it. That's the point of this whole thing. So first, why don't we just before we go, just everybody say where we can find you. So Skip, where can we find you?
Mostly on Twitch. You can find me at twitch.tv/Skipntosh, SKIPNTOSH. And I'll read a trade at a time when I go live. So you'll get a whole story from beginning to end if you come and hang out with me. And I'll be playing some video games too. Excellent.
And Chase, where can we find you?
Awesome. Yeah, I am on YouTube at Gateway into Comics. Same avatar. I'm a little bit camera shy, so I don't show my face, but you'll immediately know that it's me because I have that weird Jack's tattoo from Lost as my as my avatar. But yeah, mostly I'm just going to cover Ten of Swords right now. And then afterwards, I'm going to take a couple weeks break, and then I'm going to get back to some other different comics after that.
Excellent. And of course, I'm Rob here at Smirking Gun Reviews, where I'm also on Twitch playing games all the time. It's Smirking Gun Plays, all one word. On Twitter at reviews_gun. And right now I'm not really doing too much, doing some fan shows over on D's Reviews. Looking forward to His Dark Materials Season 2, which starts on the 16th. and continuing to do these once a month. And I know I'm probably forgetting other things. Like we got the Mandalorian. We're going to be continuing reviewing that season 2 this Friday, where Boba Fett will be back to review the show. We needed to take a little break this week, but otherwise, we will be back in December to talk about the best books in November. And hopefully you guys enjoy this. I know I like doing it. And so thank you guys so much again for being here. And we will see you guys on the next one of these next month. Bye.